liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is a special public work session where the board will discuss elementary facilities needs. During this meeting, we will not be voting or making the final decision on any topic. Questions and comments by members of the audience will be limited to those topics on the agenda for this meeting. This meeting is being videotaped for our community. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. We do have a rather large group tonight, and again, I plan to adhere to the 3-minute rule for everyone wishing to speak to the board. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. I just have a few comments before we begin tonight. I would like to tell the audience tonight that this board just received their packet on Friday afternoon. What do I mean by our packet? Our packet really mostly materials that we will be discussing tonight. Therefore, this board has not had really much time at all. Maybe today, some phone calls could have been made, but I just want to emphasize that we have not had that much time to really digest all the information that we received on Friday. So I would believe that we will need to continue our discussion on elementary facilities at a later date, perhaps as early as at our next work session. But again, we just received this information. I expect certainly dialogue and some questions tonight, but I know I need to do more homework along with many other board members. Have a lot more homework to do on this subject. So I just ask that you would all remember that as we move forward in discussion this evening. I'd ask everyone that they would turn to their next page and look at our agenda for this evening. You see we do have 4 topics. Actually, we only have 3. Then we have an audience of citizens. We will receive a transportation update. Then we'll move into elementary schools enrollments. Then we'll finish with elementary schools facilities. At that time after that, we will have an audience of citizens. And I would remind our audience tonight that I would ask and request that only your comments would be limited to elementary facilities. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. If you have anything else you do want to talk about in regards to school business, I would ask that you would come to our action meeting, which is later this month on Thursday night. I don't know the exact date. It's the 21st. That is when it's open for any comments on any issues. Again, tonight's comments are to be directed towards elementary facilities. At this point, I'll turn our meeting over to Dr. Bose.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll begin with the order of items on the agenda, and Mr. Arkwood will give the board and the community an update on recent developments in transportation, principally the appeal of a previously approved PennDOT walking area.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. Most of the board members will remember that we had a request to revisit walking routes as they're related to Penndale students. Penndale students primarily from the Broad Street area to the Valley Forge Road area and beyond that are currently walking, as well as those youngsters that come out of Franklin and Jefferson, Bradford, and down in that area. We received today at about 12:30, and we've been working ever since then in an attempt to give the board the best information that we possibly can as to how we'll resolve and handle this condition. But we received notification from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation addressing our school student walking route evaluation request that we made. And just to briefly bring you up to date, of the 460 youngsters that are currently walking to Penndale Middle School, 430 of them under this newest ruling will have to be bused. The routes were found to be hazardous. The only area that is not hazardous is the area, and if you can picture this, from Church to Broad, Broad to Hancock, Hancock to Church, and that square block, there are 30 youngsters that will continue to walk. The rest of our youngsters will have to be bused. Now, interestingly enough, on that tier of busing, which involves all of our middle schools and many of our elementary schools, we do not have vehicles. And here's what we propose to do initially. We will take our mechanics at the bus garage, because we're going to have to hire drivers and train them immediately. Beginning on Monday, we will take the mechanics, and since we are in between fall sports and winter sports at the middle school level, we will have some vehicles left in the compound that can be used. We will use those vehicles, but we need to prepare for the time when winter sports begin and those vehicles are no longer available in the afternoon. So we will be recommending that we lease 5 vehicles. We figure we'll need 6 or 7 vehicles to meet that demand as far as the number of youngsters that we will be transporting. We will recommend that we hire either 5 or 6 drivers immediately. We'll put them in a driver training program, and we will recommend that we lease 5 vehicles immediately from, if they're available, from Ryder Transportation Services, and house them at the Ryder compound with the understanding that our drivers will report there to pick those vehicles up and transport these youngsters. The additional cost now, as people are reminded, this is a reimbursable cost, but I think it's important for me to point out to you that of our $5.5 million budget, we are reimbursed 1.3, so it's about 20 cents on the dollar. We will get reimbursement for those youngsters, but it's not at the full cost of providing the service. So we're looking at an additional $60,000 to $75,000 per year to bus those youngsters. And it's something that we want to begin as early as Monday. As you know, the news media had the information that we didn't have. Representative Gottschall had it, and Senator Hull had it, and finally when we put a tracer on it on Friday, we found out that our material had been sent to Representative Gottschall's office, and we went and picked it up today. So everybody has had it before us, and we've been awaiting the information that we needed so that we could begin to put this entire package together. So we have work. We need to go back to the computer. We need to do scheduling. We have the names of all the youngsters, and it is 430 youngsters total. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, let's move on. That's it for your report, Art. You don't have anything to add?
No.
Okay, let's open it up for questions. Who has some questions for Art? Donna?
Mr. Wood, where is this in the budget, or where will you be able to pull from the budget to cover this?
Unfortunately, Ms. Mango, it is not in the budget, and it will probably put our transportation budget over. As you know, we brought you a very lean budget. We brought you a budget that clearly indicated that these youngsters would be walking, because that was the best information we had, based on a route survey that was done in May, and as a result, it will be an over-budget item.
Okay, so in that case, the recommendation is what? Go into budget reserves, or do we freeze spending in
I
certain
think we
other areas?
continue to spend out of the transportation budget with you understanding that if we come in at May or June and ask for a budget transfer, we'll have to make it. I mean, we are certainly going to watch our budget as tight as we can, but we're in a year where we have some unique experiences. For an example, we're transporting for the first time with this very comprehensive middle school athletic program, which we had no real handle on, and now we're facing this. So we would certainly keep you apprised as to where we are in the expenditure of the transportation budget.
Thank you. Thank you.
Teresa?
Thank you. Art.
Sure.
What in particular changed between the route survey in May, which deemed this area a walking route according to PennDOT, and this final report that you just received today?
I can't really give you a lot of information. I can give you some information that we kind of put together and some of the things that we learned, for an example. And that is, as you look at the youngsters coming from Franklin and Jefferson, they're saying it is necessary for a student to cross a roadway either daily or intermittently at a location where vehicular traffic is not controlled by either traffic control signals or a stop sign, or where students are not protected by an adult crossing guard. And that would be as you come up Hancock and you cross at the railroad crossing here, you actually cross the street to go over to Line Street and come into Penndale, although we do have a crossing guard at Line and Penn, but youngsters there are not, are facing a situation whereby there is not a crossing guard. One of the other comments that is very interesting, that probably was not a factor in the earlier study, and that is that 2 or more pedestrian-related accidents have occurred during the last 3 years. Well, it would have been available while the pedestrians were walking along the student walking route during hours students are normally going to and from school. And this is talking about Main Street, which goes from Valley Forge to Broad. That whole, which is quite a distance, from Valley Forge to Broad on Main. They introduced the fact that 2 or more pedestrian-related accidents have occurred during the last 3 years while the pedestrians were walking along the student walking route during hours students are normally going to and from school.
Okay, well, I guess what I'm curious about is how the route survey was actually performed in May versus...
Same way it was performed in October. It's a very scientific process.
So basically, they came out and did the same thing based on this
That's
complaint,
correct.
if you will?
That's correct. Same person, incidentally.
And the same person?
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing changed, it's an election year. Let's just hope these folks still have their buzzing once the
Well,
election's
no,
over.
but what is changing is that the district now is in a shortfall based on recommendations that were made by the same individual for the same routes. And, you know, I thought that the findings of that were erroneous when we were first presented with it. But, you know, I'm thankful for the parents who so diligently brought this to the attention of PennDOT, and to have them come out now and to only reimburse us minimally when they obviously made a grievous error in May. I'm just curious as to whether or not we have any call to lobby them for a greater reimbursement based on the mistake that they made. We didn't make the mistake. PennDOT did, but yet we're the ones, and the taxpayers in this district are going to be the ones that are, once again, end up holding the deficit bag on it, if you will. So we don't have to discuss it at length tonight, but I think something certainly is in order for us to either get some type of reimbursement, if not through financially. Maybe PennDOT wouldn't mind giving us a few buses to get us through the crunch here till next budget year.
Mrs. Krieger, just so you know, we will get full reimbursement for these students based on the number of days that they're transported.
I understand
But
that,
that full
but the ratio
reimbursement is just
compared
20
to
cents
what
to
it-
the dollar. But that's the normal.
20 cents to the dollar, exactly.
Right.
So
I just wanted
I'd like the
to
state to
realize
come
that.
up with the other 80 cents somehow. Thank you.
Let's stay on this side. Bill, Pat, any questions, comments?
I don't want to waste time looking for logic from state government, so move on.
Yes, just 2 questions, Mr. Wood, if I may. The $5.5 million, that is our total budget now. That does not include this additional $60,000 or $70,000.
That's correct.
Where's it coming?
And that's a rounded number, 5.5. It's 5.5 and some odd dollars. And that's both public and non-public. That's our total transportation budget.
And secondly, I seem to remember during the budget process where we put $125,000 in the budget for new buses, and you asked us to leave that money in there.
That's right. That would be...
Couldn't we use that reserve?
That would be, you could use that, but we still need to exercise the option. That's actually for vans, and we're finding that each day we're short vans. As a matter of fact, we've been leasing vans instead of sending full-size buses when we have small groups of people.
What's that leasing those vans costing us?
Well, I'd have to go back and research that. We shopped it with 3 different vendors, took the least expensive price, and found that it was much better than trying to do or handle it any other way, but...
Is it costing us $125,000?
No, it's not.
Okay.
The purchase was $125,000. But I'm saying to you, one of the problems that we face, we want to go to bid within the next 30 days for those vans because we always miss the cutoffs for the production year, only because our budget is a July 1 budget. And that's why we left it in this year's budget. If you recall, last year I said that we would wait because we weren't going to be able to get any bids because they were changing from 96 to in that case, 95 to 96 model year.
I remember that, but I didn't think there was a consensus on the board to purchase any new buses or vans during the budgetary process. And my thinking is that you had made a request to leave that money in there, which you said, but I'm thinking in view of this emergency situation we have right now, it would be a source of revenue for us to use at this point. And we're kind of in an emergency situation now. And my recommendation would be to perhaps see if we could use some of that money rather than make budgetary transfers. And then when we get into the budget process, let's review the van and bus situation and make a decision at that point in time.
But we will then miss another year of cutoffs, and we just can't do it. We are absolutely out of vehicles. We have people looking to take, and the nice thing about the van situation is, if we're sending the golf team away to the district meet or golf match, the coach will drive the van. And we're not in a position to give them a van. We're out of vans because we're doing so many special needs youngsters with vans. And the few vans we have are booked daily for those runs. So that's why in meeting with Dr. Bose and Ken Weir, I mentioned that I was going to lease vans. And actually, if you're taking 6 or 8 youngsters to a special event and the coach is willing to drive it, it's so much cheaper than sending a 48-passenger bus with a bus driver at our hourly rate. So we've just been leasing, and it's working well. We only started that within the last 3 or 4 weeks. But it's we absolutely need to buy some vans. As we said to you at the budget process, you're in a different driver category. It's a less expensive driver that drives a van when you use a van versus a bus, and you're not required to have a CDL license. This is going to be a hardship for us to find 5 drivers, and then once we find 5 applicants, you or we invest $1,000 in their training. And that doesn't mean they're going to stay with us. They can jump ship and go to Methacton tomorrow. So this, we're going to have to really hustle in the weeks ahead to get drivers ready for this other situation. But I would want to discuss at length the fact that we absolutely need to go out to bid for those vans, and we can't miss the opportunity of crossing budget years again.
Well, I would just like to make the recommendation to the board, if I may, that since we're leasing buses now, we compare the cost effectiveness, whether to continue to lease them or outright purchase them. We lease buses from Ryder, and we're very creative there, and I think we could be creative with this van situation as well. But my only concern was that I know that we had $125,000 in the budget.
For 5 of them.
For 5 of them, right? And I know that we would like to buy them, but in view of what PennDOT's just done to us, we may have to back up a little bit.
I can appreciate where you're coming from. I just would remind you that next year we need to do something.
Right.
And we're going to have to do something about leasing more large buses. We're just dead out of buses. You can't grow the way that we're growing. I mean, we know that we're busing most of our youngsters. We have very few walkers. And if you're picking up 400 or 450 youngsters a year, it's been 2 or 3 years since we've bought a vehicle, and that's why the leasing has worked out well for us. But the fleet is going to continue to grow. We're just busing more people than we've ever bused.
I would add that the dilemma that brings us to tonight's meeting also has an impact on transportation. As we grow with a number of students, and the students live in areas designated for transportation, the demand on the transportation stock that we now have is exceeding our ability to respond to it. And delaying the purchase, Mr. Mosley, of those buses only brings us back to face the same dilemma next year, and perhaps with less ability to respond to it. So I would urge the board to consider waiting until that time of year when we know we've exhausted what we budgeted for transportation, save those funds that were originally dedicated to purchase the additional vehicles, and then make a line item transfer, or look at the reserves at that time to see which is the best way to go to provide for the expenditures needed for the transportation that we now have responsibility to deliver, as well as looking to acquiring those additional vehicles for a growing school enrollment.
Well, my only concern was that, I appreciate what you're saying, my only concern was that when we were going through the budgetary process, I thought that Mr. Wood was very creative
He was.
in saving this district money. And my only concern is, I'm concerned with the fact that we have to outright purchase buses, because then we get involved in, it just becomes a more expensive procedure for us. And I like the idea that we're releasing them, and I think we just ought to continue to weigh the expenditure, weighing the lease against the outright purchase.
We would certainly bid, and I will bid an alternate to lease. The experience of all my colleagues is to lease minibuses, or if you will, vans. It's more practical to purchase vans, but let's look at that option and bid it for both outright purchase and lease and make the comparison.
Thank you.
It's a good idea.
Okay, Vicki.
Art, from what I understood, though, you're leasing the buses for this year, correct?
Yeah, but
And
we're
you're
gonna-
concerned about getting your bids in during the production year so that you have them online for next
It's
school
altogether
year?
different from the buses we're leasing. It has nothing to do with the buses that we're leasing.
Right.
We're looking to purchase 5 vans outright.
Right.
I didn't want to go out to bid at budget time last year because I would not have been able to get a bus in a
Right.
timely fashion for the opening of school.
That's fine, but you do want them for next school year, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then what I'm trying to say is that Mr. Mosey's recommendation for the use of those funds for this year doesn't necessarily collide with your plans if in fact you're just looking to take possession over the summer. You would be into a new fiscal year at that
Have
point
to
in
take
time.
possession in this fiscal year because they stopped manufacturing 1997 vehicles of that nature in the month of May.
Right.
That's our problem.
Fine, and you mean to tell me that you can't, but to stop manufacturing and then delivery, that you can't be in a July rotation for the 97, for
No,
the
you-
budget year in which you're taking?
They're such a specialized vehicle, since they're yellow, since they have a rating of seating, that you need to put your order in or you don't get them. Nobody, it's not like going out and trying to find a leftover van, unfortunately. I wish it was that easy, but you need to place your order.
Well, nonetheless, there was 125,000, you didn't take possession of them this year, you don't know yet what your bids are going to bring in. So the potential is still there, given the fact that you're leasing this year through most of the year, that there may be excess fund. If that's possible, fine, I guess we'll get to hear a little bit more of a balance sheet on this towards the end, but I think it is important that Mr. Mosey noted that there is an awareness of 125,000, and the accounting on that is gonna be expected as you do go forward and see where you wanna go. Did you say 130 students, or did I hear 400?
460 youngsters are currently walking students. We've been transporting some because of malfunctioning traffic light exclusive pedestrian signal at Valley Forge in Maine. But of the 460, only 30 will remain walking students.
Oh, it is 430. See, I was hearing numbers, I think when the parents came, of about 180 students. that
Well,
were
that's
being
why we
involved.
really had to get the report before we responded. I've had all kinds of people calling me, and I wasn't willing to discuss it until I had the actual report in hand.
So actually, the PennDOT report ended up removing even greater routes than what were under.
I could not go by hearsay and people saying, this group isn't gonna have to walk anymore, and that group.
Sure.
Their delineation clearly shows, and if you see it, it's very, very graphic. That's currently the walking area for Penndale. And when you go to the new walking area, you will see something that is really a graphic comparison. That's the new walking area.
I just wanted to make sure I heard you right, because it's such a difference in number. I really don't see that we have any decisions
There is no
to
decision.
be made
We
on
need
this.
to
There's
bus
nothing
those
coming forward
youngsters.
on the agenda.
And we need to bus them as soon as we can, and we're gonna start that on Monday morning. It's gonna be, as I said, we're gonna do it with our mechanics who do have CDL license. We're gonna use the vehicles that we have in the compound because we're between middle school sports seasons. But that's only gonna hold up until winter sports begin.
Art, is there any consideration that maybe Ryder, since we would need to lease the buses from them while providing our drivers to drive them, to consider, since they do a lot of that busing in that area, whether it's for St. Stan's or Lansdale Catholic, which happen to be in the same vicinity of at least the Penndale School, consider whether or not it may not actually be more economical just to subcontract that section out to them.
We have talked about that. I haven't given you the other bad news because I don't know it yet. We may be busing a lot of St. Stan's and LC ninth graders that live in that same attendance area. Only getting this at 12:30, going to the computer, doing the routes, and producing the names of our kids.
Right.
I haven't talked to Ryder yet. We may be into a more contracted service with Ryder to bus the St. Stan's and LC kids.
Well, you may want to find that maybe because we are dealing with these numbers and they're coming from the same vicinity, going to basically in the same direction,
One of the
that
things
this
you
may
have
be
to
one exception
understand,
on our own public schools transportation.
we are not running empty buses. Ryder routes are filled and our routes are filled. I did a study, if you recall, and shared it with the board, of the way we book buses coming into Penndale. We have a lot of buses passing these kids on the way in, but they're booked to the maximum, and so would the Ryder buses be. In a conversation that I had with Eric Mendrevo, we shared that, but we have to go back tomorrow and revisit that piece of it that we haven't revisited.
Well, then maybe that's something to check on.
We would certainly
instead of
check.
piecemealing the buses with the drivers. And I'd like to have an explanation, if you have one, if you've received one from the state, as to why that information was not sent directly to the district.
It was a mistake. It was a mistake. Everybody kept asking me when we were getting it. On Friday, I put a tracer with the mail service,
But that you had to go to,
but we had to go and pick it up
Representative
today at Representative Gotch.
they put the wrong mailing label on this?
No,
No,
it's
they
clear.
simply
It
sent it
clearly
to his
says
office. I knew he had an
401
inquiry.
East Hancock Street,
Okay.
but somehow or other it wound up there. Maybe they courier from PennDOT to his office, and if they did, maybe our material was couriered.
Oh, okay. I knew he had an inquiry in, but certainly his inquiry shouldn't have replaced or displaced our receipt of that information.
No, the only reason I went there is both Senator Hull and Representative Gottschall each were copied on this.
Right.
And they had the information, and the bits and pieces we were getting from them. So we finally got our copy, we have it in hand, and it is what it is.
More questions from this side? None? Point of clarification, one more time, beat a dead horse, but I want to make sure I understand it. What do we have at Penndale?
1,340-some youngsters.
1340.
That's off the top
All
of my
right,
head.
let's call it 1330, okay? So to a school of 1330 now, we're down to only 30 kids walk, and the other 1,300 get bused. And it's a school that isn't a town. I mean, many parents were out, and I had a chance to drive those areas during the day, and I felt they had some good points. I feel this is really going a little bit too far as you showed the color code, taking it down to the size it is. I'm very disappointed at how tiny they made the area considered it safe.
Well, and I think as this area becomes more congested, and there's more traffic in the North Penn area, we may find that our number of walkers will reduce considerably. I mean, this takes us
Right,
down,
yeah, that's the same one that you held up, right, Art?
yeah, only this is that's existing, Sharice.
No, this is what they determined was a non-hazardous
That's what I'm-
area.
Yeah, she's
yeah, but
trying to-
That's right.
Ken brought up a good point. I'm still a little bit confused. What will be the total number of walkers coming to Penndale?
30.
All together, on this area.
From Lansdale Borough.
30.
30 total.
We had 460. It was our largest walking area. There it is.
That's ridiculous.
It's Main Street from Church to Broad, Broad to Hancock, Hancock to Church, Church to Main.
I just want to make sure I understood it clearly.
Just the block
Can I
around the
ask you a
school,
question?
basically.
If one of the considerations that deemed these areas hazardous was the lack of a crossing guard,
No, that didn't.
wouldn't it be more advantageous for us to just even look at what it would cost to put crossing guards at these intersections?
Well, that's all you do have to do.
Compared to buying buses
Well-
and,
But you have to understand, Mrs. Krieger, the crossing guard is hired by the borough, and we share in 50% of the cost.
Right.
So you need to convince if you wind up hiring 10 crossing guards, we need to convince the borough that they're gonna pay 50% of 10 crossing guard salary.
But aren't they required to do that if that's the only
There's no requirement.
disqualifier? We do that all over the district. If it's disqualified for a walking guard only, now if it's dealing with other issues such as traffic
Not
accident
required.
history and things like that, well, how much of this is resolved through a crossing guard? Or, I mean, other areas I know were because there wasn't
Think about how many
exclusive
crossing-
traffic light.
Think about how many crossing guards you would have from Valley Forge to Line Street.
No, I don't mean even
I'm
that.
not
I'm not
saying
talking
the
that
whole
far
area.
out. I'm
Okay.
saying,
You're-
is there, could it be
For lack of
expanded
better words, pick
closer
hotspots,
to the
right?
school by the, I guess we need to see the full report too,
walking
because
area, but not the whole
I didn't,
thing.
I knew there were many areas that were out there that had many different factors to be taken into consideration. But I would think that the parameters closer to the school, if they're
Right.
dealing with just a crossing guard, would at least allow us to expand that a little, if they're not dealing with other
See,
conditions.
part of our problem rests with the fact that if we put a crossing guard at Broad and Main,
Right.
and they require a crossing guard at Main and Line, which they've declared hazardous, you go right beyond Broad Street on Main and you're at the railroad tracks. So what do you put at the railroad tracks? I'm not sure they even allow crossing guards at railroad tracks. I don't know the answer to that. But that enters in as one of the contaminants on this walking route.
Bart, is there any chance that they could reverse their decision? The reason
Well-
being is, I just trust this a lot, because I think this has nothing to do with children's safety. This has everything to do with politics. The only thing that happened from the determination in May till this point in time was the results of a May primary and who's going into a general election. That's what this is about. You take an area that size, that was okay, all those kids could walk, and now we're down to something the size of a quarter. That's a lot of voters. That's all this is.
It's 1 square block.
So I would hate to see the election go by, and all of a sudden PennDOT say, maybe we were wrong again.
You have the right as a board, as you did before, to request us, if you will, a school student walking route evaluation at any time. I mean, we did one in May, we came back and we did one in October.
Well, I credit the parents for going to the extent that they did for their children. I believe their efforts were noble. I don't trust the nobility, or what seems to be a lack of nobility on the part of PennDOT, any official that had his hand in this.
Because this went way beyond those parents,
Right.
the areas of concern. I mean, I passed that motion, and I felt that there were safety issues there. I saw that there was a conditional approval based on an exclusive pedestrian light, which I knew was not exclusive, because I drive through there and I could see the light wasn't frozen for moving traffic.
They have a
I saw-
criteria, they have a formula. They used it
But
and reported back to us their findings.
some may not be resolvable, others though, if we look at the segments that are there may be enough students in that area, and it may be a simple solution such as a walking guard that may make it worth it for us to expand. I mean, they will put a no on it if you're saying you're not going to put one there, where it may be a go, if you simply say that there will be one provided. So I guess we just, maybe to see the report, because that's what you could tell out of the previous reports that we've gotten, and
We get to see
I don't
it.
think we need to take any more time here,
Report's very
because we're
simple, it
working
just
without
tells
the
you,
paper.
I mean, the report starts out in non-hazardous conditions until you get to certain areas.
Could you give us student numbers though in those squadrons?
I want to too.
Because that has to be done anyway for you to
I have
judge
the
your bus.
students, I have the students
Okay,
here, by
I don't mean
address.
here now, I mean if forwarded to us so that we have a chance to look at it.
Sure.
So we know how many
I think,
students
yeah,
within
I
that.
think there's a majority of them
Right.
like that, the report
Yeah.
and whatever you can forward to us, so we can discuss this further. We may need to discuss it again Tuesday night, and if we need to take any kind of vote the following Thursday night, we'd be prepared to do it, to direct you and.
Well, I really need to have direction.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
needs to bus
we
according
don't
to
want to be
this.
faced with any kind of a pedestrian or a student accident.
Right.
In the interim, when we've been directed to bust these youngsters, and that's why we're
Well, I
working
think in the interim, we're forced to
as
budget.
do
hard
it.
as we are to bust them Monday
We're
morning.
forced to abide by this until there's any
Right.
provisions
Right.
made into the
Use
contract.
that
Well-
as lead time to look into some of these other issues.
Okay.
This is a lot of patience and long suffering on Art and his staff's part. This has really put a strain on your workload.
It's not
Art.
something, I mean, we drop everything, go back to the computer, and and just finding vehicles. I mean, I'm saying we're gonna lease 5 buses. I don't know that Ryder has 5 buses to lease us. I mean,
And
I'm
again,
hoping.
you haven't even scratched the surface as far as what will happen with the private
I
procurement.
mean, I got this at 4:30 this afternoon from John Cotran. He started at 12:30 with Greg Koch on the computer, just indicating or determining which youngsters have to be bused.
Approximately.
What we'll
what's the
do is,
date
you
on
know,
that?
if you could get more information out to the board, and we'll put this on the agenda for the work session Tuesday night to follow up, further discuss. Okay?
That's it.
We will do that.
It's a wrap.
Okay. Thank you, Art.
Yep.
Okay, now we'll move on to item number 2, elementary school enrollments. Dr. Bose.
We'll begin this discussion and review with a focus on enrollments, both as we've experienced them in the past and as we expect them to occur in the future. And I've asked Mrs. Clark, whom I consider among us probably the most informed of the staff members, in addition to Tom Sugar, on enrollments in our school district, what they are now, what they were in the past, and what we expect them to be. Judy will set the stage then with a review of enrollments for a discussion on facility needs and what we might do to respond to those needs. Mrs. Clark.
Okay, if I could draw your attention in your packet, if following the Knapp Elementary School where it breaks that out and shows the actual classrooms, you will see a chart that says enrollment and the date is 10/30/96. What we tried to provide for you was an actual visual of what the numbers are broken out by grade levels. And if I can draw your attention to Bridle Path School as an example, you can see in the kindergarten session AM, there are 2 classes. There are 24 children in one class, 25 students in the next class. The PM session, 24 and 22 respectively. And across the entire grade level configuration, you can see what it looks like per classroom. What I would tell you to look at and pay attention to are the numbers that are circled. Those are the actual classes that exceed the class size guidelines. Let me explain our class size guidelines. For kindergarten through 3rd grade, our class size guidelines are 19 students to 23 students. However, in our class size guidelines, we provide for a 10% leeway in either direction, so the range can be between 17 and 25 students. In the 4th through 6th grade, 22 to 25. However, if you look at that 10% leeway, you can see that the range is between 20 and 28 students. So currently we have 43 classes that are over class size guidelines, and this is affecting 1,205 students. And this visual, I feel, will help you because it really shows you what the grade configuration looks like. Some of the other charts may get a little bit confusing. If you move on to the next page, it's just a very brief synopsis of the PEL projections. There's been a lot of discussion about the PEL projections and the accuracy. We took last year's and this year's PEL projections and we compared them against the 10th day enrollment. If you look across the 95-96, you will see that the 10th day enrollment was 7,226 students. The PEL mid-range projected us at 7,283 students, which shows a difference of 57 students less than anticipated. However, if you move across that line, the PEL low-range projections had us at 7,102 students, and in actuality, we were 124 students more than expected. You can see that consistently, and that is why we have said that we refer primarily to the PEL mid-range projections. Moving on to the next chart, which says enrollment figures October 28, 1996. This chart is important only in terms of the averages. If you look across all of the schools, you can see what the average class size is. Now, the problem that we get into, and I'll draw your attention to one particular school, is Walton Farm. If you can come down to Walton Farm, and follow across on the average, you will see at the third grade, we have 24.75, and they put .75, that's just the computer, and that's how it generates. If we get 2 more students, we're over the class size in that particular grade level. So it just shows you what the average number is. The clearer picture is that first chart that I showed you, which was the breakout of the classes. If you turn to the next page, this is the elementary classroom utilization. What we decided to do is just look at this in purest sense, which is the straight line projections. Dr. Sugar did a presentation for the board in June, and he talked about the replication of the first grade. We used the first grade numbers and replicated those forward, and the reason that we did is traditionally we have found that the kindergarten classes are less because many parents will opt to use private kindergartens because of daycare situations. So our numbers in first grade have traditionally been larger, and we felt that this would be more appropriate to use those numbers. If you just take a look at that chart, you can see what the picture looks like, and what we are showing for the 97-98 school year is a deficit of 7 regular education classrooms. And I say regular education because in a minute I'm going to mention the special education. Turn to the next page, which is the 98-99 school year, and you can see that the enrollment picture worsens using straight line projections. We're showing a deficit of 14 rooms for regular education students. Now traditionally, with special education, we have added a number of classes every year, and when we talked about this before, I said between 5 and 7. I went back to the years 1994, 95. We hired 5 new teachers for special education at the elementary level. 95, 96, 8 new teachers, and 96, 97, 4 new teachers. I know many times we don't use full-size classrooms for those students depending on the numbers. However, that also depends on the speciality of the condition of those students. So I could not say all of those students could be in half-size classrooms. This just gives you a basic analysis using actual numbers and moving forward. This does not even factor in the growth if we're looking at PEL. Last year around this time, Dr. Sugar and I went to every municipality and we met with the township managers and we talked about the growth in terms of housing starts. And the areas of most volatility are Montgomery Township, of course, and Towamencin Township. And the housing starts in Towamencin Township actually outweigh Montgomery right now. So you can see that even without the growth factor in this, what the deficit of rooms will be. Dr. Bose, that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Now, I know we can argue about projections, and projections are somebody else's best estimate using demographic data available to project school-age student enrollment numbers. If we only looked at our own experience, in the past 10 years, we have averaged an increase of elementary age students of 253. That's our own experience. And if we applied simply our own experience to show the kind of growth that we might expect from our own experience, we're expecting an additional 253 students next year. But I also am saying we could argue about the Pell projections, whether the low range has been accurate, as has been illustrated, or whether we looked at some other range, mid-range or high range, or your own range. The point that the administration is trying to make here is that we have reached a period of time where we will have a deficit in classrooms next year if we don't plan to take some action. Now that's the next topic. What action might we take? What are our options and what considerations might provide the kind of relief that we're looking for? Now, when I've looked at this, I thought about the 3 most important criteria that ought to influence us as we deliberate, evaluate, and debate the choice that we ought to make. And those criteria are considering a deficit is projected next year in the number of classrooms for elementary age children, that one criteria is availability in 1997. Another criteria ought to be the least disruption to the school district and the families that it serves. And the third criteria ought to be the most for the least expenditure that we can plan. And that's like any family does. You try to make the best of your purchases and get the best bargains you can, and school districts ought to be no different as consumers. And so if you look at the first page of this report, we've suggested, as Mrs. Clark has demonstrated, that we already have this year 43 classrooms where we exceed our own guidelines. And so we expect that to be exacerbated if we don't have a plan to accommodate even more growth at whatever level you choose to believe is going to happen. But I do believe we all think that we're not going to experience a mass exodus, that we're going to continue to see new folks move to North Penn who have school-aged children, particularly elementary-aged children. And so we're here to consider what we might do to provide relief not only to those new folks, but to everybody else who's already here, sending their children to elementary schools in our district. We've looked at a number of options. I believe the number is around 8 or 9 now, and I will briefly mention them, and we've listed them in the order of preference. The first one would be to hold some of the Keenest Road property, sufficient for an elementary school site, and for a new elementary school. That's probably not realistic because of the cost of that option. The next option is everyone's favorite, the kindergarten center. It used to be my favorite, it no longer is my favorite. And I think that's for obvious reasons. Though I've watched the kindergarten center, one place for 15 years and another place for 8 years, and that place also is a place where my wife was an elementary school teacher, and I never found a parent in those 15 years or a teacher complain about a kindergarten center. But that's not an option I'm going to talk about as realistic for North Penn. The next option is the placement of modulars at Inglewood, Knapp, Montgomery, Nash, and North Wales, and that's discarded because of the major boundary changes that would require, and that's in violation of one of the criteria about disruption. The next option is hiring and placement of classroom aides. Now, we've done that this year as an emergency situation. And I believe anybody who knows how that's working is rather surprised that it's working so well. But that's not a permanent solution. That was a temporary solution and an emergency condition type solution. The next one is increasing class size. We have these guidelines about class size, and Mrs. Clark referred to the numbers, and you've probably seen them and heard about them many times. I will not raise class size guidelines. The guidelines we now have are administrative in origin, and I will not raise them. If the board decides to do so as an act of its own authority, that's the board's decision. I don't believe it's a good idea. There's always the possibility of split sessions. You don't normally see split sessions in elementary schools. Normally you see them in high schools. Split sessions are a possibility in elementary schools. They're not being considered favorably by me and those on my staff because they would be ungodly, unusual hours, and considering the daylight and sunset times in this area would not be probably a good idea. And the other possibility is a year-round school, and generally how that works is that 3/4 of the kids are in school at any one time, so the capacity of a school is increased by 25%, or the enrollment demands are decreased by 25%, depending on how you want to look at it, but some kids are in school in the summer. So It divides the school year into 4 quarters. Every kid goes 3 quarters, so that means some kids go to school in the summer. And that's not being recommended, it's not normally popular in an area that values summer vacations. So, those are the options we considered, and we're not suggesting that they're the only options. There may be other options that anybody might have who thinks long, hard, and reflectively about the problem. The problem is we expect more kids than we have room for in a traditional way in which we organize time, children, teachers, and facilities. So, the recommendation is, and it's found in the last paragraph on the bottom of the first page, that is a proposal to add modulars to NASH and an addition to NAP, which will bring, we believe, immediate relief in 97, will cost the least and provide the most for the investment, and will cause the least disruption to the school district. There would be some redistricting or boundary changes, but that would be minimal compared to what was considered under the second consideration. So if you would turn to the next page, what we've proposed here is a timeline to accomplish the recommendation that we're proposing the board consider and the community evaluate. And that is the addition to NAP and the modulars to NASH. And we're proposing what would happen and in what sequence for year 1, year 2, and we list the advantages to be considered and evaluated. The NAP property of all our school sites is the one elementary school site that could accommodate an expansion easily, and it has the most central location, which makes boundary changes simpler than if it were on one extremity or the other of the school district. The cost figure is realistic in that as the board considers bonding for other projects, it might consider adding the bonding costs to do this expansion at Knapp School. It enables us to maintain the class size guidelines we now have. And it provides relief within 2 years, possibly in 97 itself, if we were willing to make the change during a school year as opposed to waiting to the beginning of the school year or prior to the beginning of the school year. And it gives us adequate time to make the boundary changes and announce the boundary changes that would accompany the completion of the new additional space, and time enough for everybody to adjust to that who might be affected by a boundary change. And we try to look at the expansion options cost-wise on the next page, actually the next several pages. And on page 4, if you're following the numbers at the top, we project a rough estimate without the assistance of architects about what that option might cost that meets those 3 criteria. We show the modulars with an expansion of the NASH site plan or room chart on what would be page 5. And on page 6, we show how NAP might be expanded to not nearly double, but close to double its current size, with certain core facilities expanded to handle a larger enrollment. I've read this myself several times. I'm probably an average reader, and I know it takes 45 minutes to an hour to thoroughly study it and have some sense of what it proposes. What I ask the board to consider is the hard choice that it has to make about choosing one of these options, if not the one recommended, any one of the others, or one of its own choice, any of which or all of which would provide the kind of relief that we're suggesting would best be in place next year. Further delays only exacerbate the problem and can only lead to one option to cope. If there's not an option to add facilities, the only option left is to increase class size. And that, I don't believe, is a good option, but it might be the only one left if there are no additional facilities forthcoming. At this time, I'll be glad to take questions or encourage discussion, Mr. President, from members of the board in any way you choose to proceed.
Okay, I have a couple comments before we start. Over the past couple months, I think we as a board have tried to key in on the important issues to close out this year. And I do believe it was either a month or two ago, we had talked that technology, as part as we did not choose to send technology to the state for the long-range plan. I believe we had scheduled technology for the month of November. I believe we all recall that we talked about a work session in November looking like we would have technology. We'd also talk about bond again, and we would begin talking about what the framework of the budget would look like. I think that's what we all agreed to. Last week, I called Ken Weir, and I talked to Ken at length about where are we with technology. I had many calls from board members on the request of an update on where we are in technology, and I posed that question to Ken, and Ken was quite frank with me and said we are not prepared at this point to bring this to the board. We're just not ready due to some circumstances within the district that really Ken couldn't control, or any of us, also due to the accident with Lou Nyman and his family. We aren't ready. I proceeded to talk to then board member David Whites, and I had a long discussion with David, and I know he got back to Ken, and I believe it's fair to say that between David and Ken and I, we all agreed that we would postpone technology to a later date. The reason I'm bringing all this up is, as I said earlier, this board only received this information on Friday afternoon. We can certainly get into dialogue tonight, and I think we should, but I don't think we should spend countless hours tonight on it. I'd like to digest it a little bit, make some phone calls to Art, talk to some other administrators. That's how I feel, but what I'm saying is, at this point, we're going to drop technology from the November work session, and I feel what we really should do is key in on this issue. We should also key in on where we are with bond, as Mrs. Scher has kindly reminded us, and we all need to keep that in mind. Also, we need to come back and revisit where we are with the busing, and I think we'll wrap up the work session that night with the framework of the budget. So again, unless anybody has a major problem with that, that's the direction I see us going. Again, I think we should get the dialogue started tonight and take it home and come back and revisit it on Tuesday. How's that sound? I mean, does that sound fair?
I think that's great. I think also that I think there's some information that might help each of us get a real handle on too that isn't quite here. So at least establishing that and getting that out, you know. So
just to revisit technology, maybe Ken or David, you could chime in. I think you were talking perhaps as early as December, but maybe not till Jan. It was, you thought December or January is when we'd be ready to bring something forward.
December, January.
My concern, Mr. President, is that we've been putting this bond issue off for about 3 months.
No, that's why it'll be the next work session.
And my concern is, you know, after the election, listening to some of the stock market analysts, there's quite possibility the interest rates are going to change.
That's why Tuesday night, we need to really come
Well,
to
we're
some
not going to
kind
be
of
able to beat
consensus
that
as to where
deadline.
we're going to go.
That's tomorrow.
Right.
But that work session, you are intending, then if we come to resolution on this, at least on us, and I know what kind of figures you need to have brought forward to review as to what your dollars in borrowing is looking like.
Sure.
And then we can move with that. I mean, Dennis, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like you to have all the rest of your, what you already see as approved bond borrowing expenditures so far, so that if we're here at the next work session and we're evaluating this, if there's a consensus from this board, you'd be able to get a handle, give the board, the figure.
That's fine, Mr. Sherman.
That would be
I will have,
Based on
I will have a
that?
number of alternatives for what the different
Well, it
areas
doesn't
of
even have
boards.
to be, just give us the subtotal, and if we've come to some conclusions and there's some estimates that we can receive, given Art's experience, depending on which way we're
Sure.
going, we'll be able to at least
We'll
move
be able to-
forward so we can put something on the action
That's-
meeting
right.
agenda, and in the meantime, though, we need to get a consensus. If we can get a consensus, we can at least have our bond agents working on this for the action
I
meeting.
think
It
we
doesn't
really-
just
right.
happen.
I think we really need to try to get a vote this, in November.
We have to bring
November's
closure
action
for this
meeting on
bond.
bond. One other thing I'd like to add before we really get into dialogue tonight, I would like to have a brief executive session tonight following this meeting to discuss real estate issue. Therefore, I would ask that all board members, I didn't call anybody on it, this is just bringing it up now, but I would like to have a short executive session.
I have a
Okay.
request.
Sure.
Dennis, when you come to us with the information on the bond, I think part of what seems to be holding things up here is we don't know the exact amount.
That's what I hear.
And it would be interesting to see, we may be losing money because we haven't taken action.
That's correct.
Okay. Why don't you, if you could, what would it cost if we were to overborrow by $1 million because we didn't know? And let's just say we take a bond for 30 million and we realize we need 29, and we take that million and pay it back within a year. What does that add to the cost of the bond issue? And what I'm trying to get to is, instead of having this thing down to the last dollar, if it makes sense to say, well, let's borrow what we think we need, and if we make a mistake on the high side and we pay it back immediately, what did it cost us versus what it's costing us to do nothing?
Mr. Allen, it would cost a little extra in our closing costs because some of those costs are based on the total amount of the borrowing. But hopefully with that $1 million paying back, we could recover that cost through a gain on our interest.
Thank you.
But you have to have a sincere intent for the use of that money, otherwise you're involving yourself in arbitrage. Secondly, Bill, with all due
If you
respect, I have
sorry.
never seen extra money at the end of a borrowing.
Paid back.
There has never, we are in
Never
deficits.
paid back.
We are in deficits on borrowed
Then let's
funds.
just keep
Robbing Peter to
nitpicking
pay
so we
Paul,
don't do
we'd
it.
never
I'm curious.
end up with extra money, so I
As
would
we
not,
said,
as
Mrs.
finance
Sharp,
liaison.
we plan to have a specific budget this
Right.
time, which is something we have not had in the
That's right.
history that I've been associated here. And we will live within that budget.
Right.
And both points from either side are well taken, but I do believe that there is a consensus that we need to bring this bond issue to closure as early as our November action meeting.
I agree.
Absolutely, even if we do have to base it on an estimate, it may
Right.
not be dollar for dollar, but my message that I took from this board and the platform that you set forward was to bring greater fiscal accountability to the spending of the district, and with that, that's why there's a new policy here. There will be an outlined budget, there will not be vague bond issue perspectives that just simply note different projects for money to go to, and in the meantime, no one can really say where all the millions went. And parents are looking for the buildings, and we've got the debt to where we should have a new building sitting on every one of our piece of properties if you look at what we've got in indebtedness in this district, but we don't. And I just wouldn't support that, and not, against being down to the very penny, Bill, but
If you
I'm sorry, I
budget
think we
$4
have to be
million
more
for an
responsible.
addition and it comes in at $3 million and you borrowed the 4, you just pay off the 1 million, so if we can't handle that little transaction, I don't get it. We just say, pay it back now. Dennis, write a check, pay it back, and get it out of the bond fund. It's done. Sure you can.
Sure. They just
I
had
thought there was something that you sent us about, you have to be very careful about how much you borrow because.
arbitrage, but if you pay it right back, the school district of Summers Point is just in that situation where they borrowed, they estimated a new elementary school at 8.2 million, and lucky for them, their bids came in at 7.2. So they're paying that $1 million right back.
How much time do you have to pay that back?
You have to
sit on that money for a year.
Correct, you have to do it within the first year.
Within the
first year. But we would hopefully know that as soon as our bids were finalized.
Well, let's hopefully we'll be productive enough at the next work session that this will
Which
be a
is
moot point.
Next Tuesday night. Pardon me?
See, the
Sure.
concern I
Hold
have
on.
with that, Mrs. Shears, it's very good to say, what Bill says, borrow more than you need. And then we have a year to pay it back. But now that increases our bond debt service that I'm not criticizing.
I was gonna say, I disagree with you.
No, I'm not
I don't
criticizing.
understand.
But what I'm saying is, we talked about this when bond counsel was here, that if we borrowed 29 million, our debt service on interest is gonna go up $2 million a year. Well, if we don't pay that back within a year and we get to the budgetary process and we increase taxes and then we decide to pay that money back, are we gonna also, at some point in time, decrease taxes by that amount? I doubt it.
What?
I doubt that very
Preaching
seriously.
to the choir.
Right, let's get back to elementary. We will discuss bond Tuesday night.
We got bigger fish to fry.
We'll have an aggressive agenda for next Tuesday night. I believe Ken wanted to make a comment.
I just wanted to comment that certainly the absence of a comprehensive report regarding technology needs should not stand in the way of our further discussion and commitment to a bond issue.
That's right.
And I don't want to be a part of any delay as it relates to the absence of a full technology report. I explained that in a conversation to Tom on Friday, and I explained that to David White this afternoon. We all know that the action plan and the long-range plan for technology was very ambitious and very expensive. And certainly, when we bring forth a three-phase or three-year plan, for instance, if in fact we do bring forth a three-year plan, it will be less expensive, considerably less expensive than the action plan which was discussed. Having said that, our needs are dramatic and the costs will be relative to our needs. So we'll be talking about perhaps a three-year plan. I think we need to wonder together the length of time we should finance technology and whether technology needs are financed for the same period of time as building needs. I think we've had previous conversations here that perhaps we should not be making a bond issue for technology needs of the same term as for building needs. So
Mr. Weir, I have an answer for you there.
Pardon?
Yes. With the bond council, in the past, we thought that there would have to be two separate bond issues because of a difference in term. However, with our new advisors, they were very creative. They were able to provide an amortization schedule which would have, for instance, if we were to have borrowed $2 million for technology, the amortization would have cleared that money. They could have that cleared off of our financial books and off the indebtedness, be it for 7 years or be it for 10 years, without incurring the new separate issuance costs. So in other words, the expenses of a whole separate bond issue, because you were doing it for a separate time, was really resolved within one bond issue, if in fact we had a handle on the figures to be able to do that. And from what I heard from everyone, they thought that really brought a significant savings if in fact you were going to do two different borrowings. There was a big savings in combining it and being able to carry it through one.
We will be able to talk with you about our needs. That does not mean that we'll have a detailed, specific shopping list with nomenclature for all equipment. But certainly, we can talk about our needs.
Could I?
And that we'll be prepared to do.
Well then, in the meantime though, would it be possible if at least Dennis and myself and David and yourself and Lou perhaps have some discussion?
I think we should, yes. That's
Could-
Yeah,
could I
and all
suggest that?
in due respect to David, when we talked, we had talked about, as we get into bond discussion Tuesday night, certainly we need to talk some about technology. We may be dealing with some generalities, but we need to, there's been
There has to
talk,
be some
just to get started, what's this board willing to put into are we willing to put money into a bond towards technology?
Even if we're dealing with the minimal needs that really have reached emergency status.
But we're getting, I didn't want us to get off base here, but I'm as bad, I'm
Only
as
thing
guilty as
is,
anybody.
Tom, this one's relevant because if we're gonna reach some closure on this bond issue for
Right.
the action meeting, I think that between finance and the technology department, maybe we can come to some.
Right.
Come to some business.
We'll try. Okay, let's get back, let's come back to elementary. Sorry about that. Okay.
Not here for the bond?
Sure, yeah, we do, it would be nice to have some order now. We could move on for board questions. I think we start on that side. Let's start over here. Any questions tonight? Just remember, we will be back visiting this Tuesday night in
Real
Lake.
quickly.
Sure,
I
go ahead.
understand in the year 2, Knapp Elementary expanding and improve core facilities. I understand, we have to expand and improve the core facilities there, but regarding the classrooms, why can't they be modulars? Is that, why is it modulars and why is it addition? I don't understand.
When you're adding this many classrooms, and it's in the front of the building as you drive up Knapp Road, it would not be my recommendation to the board to do that in modular classrooms. And I think we're finding with modular classrooms at $100,000 a pop, and the ongoing maintenance as far as the exterior, and we maintain them, but it's a constant. There's a constant need to stain the T111 and keep them maintained the way you have to maintain them. I would recommend bricks and mortar in this particular edition. What you're doing is you're taking a Knapp Elementary School, and for those of you that have been in it, is in dire need of some upgrades.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
go into that gymnasium and think about having a class in there. I mean, it's going to be, if you look at the way that we've put this drawing together, and this is only a beginning point, but actually our present gym will become the stage, a storage area for music, and a storage area for the stage. It gives you an idea as to how small that room is.
I was in there.
Same thing is true with the cafeteria.
Right.
We talked, as an administrative team, we talked openly about the fact that having a small school on such a big site, and if you think about a 14th elementary school, you're thinking about adding all of the support staff that you need, principal, secretary, custodial, cafeteria, librarian. It goes through the whole process. By bringing this building to a building that would have a capacity of 700 or 725 youngsters, you have that staff there. I'm not saying you won't have to expand on a custodial staff.
Right. Well, I'm not questioning it.
But
My
what I'm
point was
saying
the
is,
difference in,
if
I just had
you're-
a question. I remember in regards to long-range plan, we considered modules there, and I understand. I was in the building. I can, you don't have to explain regarding expanding core facilities. I mean, it's.
But we're saying the addition should be bricks and mortar. It
Right.
should
I mean,
be a
what-
building
Okay.
that
So
will
it's more
take us
practical
into
is
the
what you're saying.
21st century.
Okay. Thank you.
It's more permanent.
Okay, more questions?
Judy, I received the special ed utilization, classroom utilization I'd asked for previously, except I was looking for classroom utilization by student, and what we received were the amount of staff that's designated towards the classrooms. And I guess if we move forward to a work session, the questions I'd like to have resolved is, as we look through these sheets, and we find that there's 123 of our students that are designated special ed, and those I can see where their classrooms are, such as for autistic and et cetera. But yet I have
Pages and pages of
pages and pages of staff with rooms, and yet the student body is really in the classrooms because they are basically, I guess, using it as resource.
I can
and
explain that.
support.
The children that you see in the special education count, where you're seeing 126, they are our full-time students. Those children have their full instruction with a teacher. The other children are included in the regular education count, however their instruction is supplanted, which means that they can be in a special education classroom anywhere from 1% of their day to 85% of their day. So there needs to be an existing space for those children. For example, they would start the day out in a regular homeroom, but just say they're placed for the areas of reading, language arts, and math. They leave their regular classroom and go to the special education room. So that's where the confusion is. We only count as separate those students that are full-time, and that you'll see on the 10th day enrollment. However, 126 is deceiving because we're running close to 900 special education students in the district.
Okay, I realize that, but those 800 are all here being designated strictly with the classroom teacher when we look at classroom staff ratios. When in fact, I guess, when we're back to the time study issue, as I sit here and I see these numbers being played out on this piece of paper, there is all this support staff that is in fact obviously serving some purpose in supporting the classroom teacher. Beyond all the learning support, which whether they're in the classroom because they're going to the student, or whether the students are leaving these numbers in these classrooms and going into the separate room that's reserved for them.
Correct.
We have that. We have our pull-out programs where we have 5 children in a classroom is offered to instrumental music at one time, another group's with the math aids, and others with the reading aids, or the reading aids are in the classroom. What is really the staff to student ratio that we really deal with? That when you consider all the different factors that are actually buffering these numbers. You know, at any given time, you walk into a classroom, you do not have all those students here because there are so many new pull-out programs that didn't used to exist 7, 8 years ago. And we have all the support staff that is now going into the classroom. I see a classroom of 29, my daughter's in that classroom. I sat and listened to a parent, actually, who had a child with my daughter, raise an issue of the 29 students in 5th grade. Well, she had 29 in 4th grade too, but besides that, she has a student teacher. There's a student teacher in that classroom, at least through this semester, and if we're aggressive enough, given our area, the potential is there to have a student teacher for the second semester. So the student to staff ratio in that classroom is really 1 to 15.
Vicki, I have to
I'm
say
sorry, the teacher to student ratio can, look, I'm trying to make responsible decisions based on the fact that our peak enrollment in this school district is scheduled for 1999. I saw Nash Elementary sold to this district in '73. When it opened in '76, it was 2 years into declining enrollment, and we were selling Spec, and we were selling West Point, and we were selling the other schools. Well, what do we want to put on the chopping block in the year 2002 when we've dropped enrollment to the degree? York Avenue, Inglewood, which of our neighborhood schools do we want to put on the market to replace this?
Let's go back and see that, wait, this is poor discussion right now, folks.
All I'm looking for is the
Judy,
significant
could we get,
information
I think Judy wanted to try to address that. Let's give it a shot. Go.
Let me tell you how difficult this is, Tom, and I need to
But I had the
explain-
same question.
Okay, but let me explain this to you. You have a regular 4th grade, and the number of students on the rolls is 29. Now, within that classroom, all those kids will come in for homeroom. Say if you have children placed for gifted support, they may leave for a percentage of the day. Learning support, they may leave for a percentage of the day. Orchestra, band, they may leave for a percentage of the day, but they come back. So you can't look at it that maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning that goes down to 15, but at 11 they're all back for lunch again. I mean, you have to really look at it as a whole. To break that out, you can find kids in any elementary classroom going out for a number of different things. That's no different as it was when I was in school or even when you were in school. So I think to break that out, you'd have to almost do an analysis by hour, and that can change day to day, month to month, or year to year.
How about less detailed? How about just,
Well, you know, the issue is though, Tom, actually, if the teacher was having greater responsibility, we could have the same staffing levels, but class sizes of about 15. When you consider how much is being devoted to the side staff that's basically taking on those little
But those
areas
people are not meeting kids in numbers of 28 and 29.
No, but
They're meeting them
right.
in numbers of 4 or 5 for special purposes. The special purposes are determined on an individual basis, child by child. I don't know of any school in this country that's scheduled in such a way that every staff member spends every minute with the average class size of that school. They spend time with portions and bits and pieces of the student body or a typical class, but still, the teacher who's responsible for all 29 some of whom leave at different times of the day for varying periods of time, is still responsible for the 29.
Well, I realize that, Dr. Bose, but what I'm saying is until we really take into consideration the fact that there has been so much of division of the classroom responsibilities, and when you are carrying all the supplemental staff, somewhere they have to have something, some student body credited towards their time. If it's 25%, such as with gifted, that the gifted support generally, it may have changed, Judy, I don't know, but when my son, it was 25%. 25% of his student day was there. Well, if you have 35th graders, you know that 25% of their time is outside that classroom in these numbers. It's a matter of trying to.
But you're
to
looking
bring
at a
some-
potential of 900 students, even less than that, spread across the whole elementary picture against 7,000 some students. The number is small. And I think we have to keep that into consideration. Kids will still go out for Title I, they'll go out for reading support, they'll go out for speech, they'll go out for music. I mean, that is a typical elementary classroom.
I'm talking a couple of students. In many cases, we're talking 14 classrooms based on 1 or 2 extra students over the guidelines. So that can be significant when you're looking at the whole picture. And I guess when I see all the support, and I'm wondering, where are their numbers? We don't even, we know we have all the staff, but we don't even know how much of the student body is actually utilizing these classrooms in the course of a day.
I can give you the number of students that are enrolled in every one of those special education classrooms.
Because it's not even dealing with time. This is dealing with classroom needs.
This is our turn. You'll get your turn.
When I look
We're trying to discuss, and I just ask for your patience. You'll get your turn tonight, but really it's starting to get disruptive, and I just ask for your patience.
But I would tell you that that's a percentage of those students' day, and you have to keep that in mind. They do return to the classroom,
Well, when we're talking,
with the exception of the full-time students,
Right.
such as autistic support or life skill support.
I understand, Judy, but when I see here and I go to Nash, we don't have any of our extreme special needs students full-time. I assume on the sheet, there's none on the sheets.
Our emotional support is part-time now,
Okay.
so they are integrated.
Okay, so I don't have any full-time students designated to any classrooms. But we're sitting here talking about classroom needs, and I have 5 full-size classrooms. No, I'm sorry, 3 full-size classrooms with 5 staff members assigned to those 3 rooms, and then I have, other spaces that are being used. And I'm not looking beyond the full-size when I'm taking into consideration. And we don't even know the utilization of those classrooms as it relates to the student body.
It would be very easy for me to let you know the number of students that are included in each class. But you have to understand there's a range with the percentage of their time. So you can't just make a judgment saying that, they're out for X amount of time, because
Sure.
they're in and out of that regular classroom. And you have to keep in mind, the goal for those children is to return them as much as we can once remediated to the regular classroom. And that's an ongoing process. We mainstream children all the time. So, I wouldn't want to pin any false hope on that number being a constant.
Okay, and just so everyone can understand, the reason why we're sitting here, and perhaps this task is even more difficult, is we're not midway through growth at elementary level. If we're hanging our hats on the PELs, then we have to hang it also on the fact, hang our decisions on the fact that we move forward knowing that the scheduled peak for elementary enrollment is the 1999 school year. As I look through these numbers, we've given you 2 years, and that is if the peak does hold off. Basically, our elementary numbers, as you see, kindergarten is almost equal with the outgoing, the 6th grade, which is outgoing. I believe that we're approaching the plateau, but PELs would say that the following years, from what you have here, 97, 98 would be 76, 24, I believe it was. And then we would have 7,636 in the 98-99 year. That's when we would expect to open the NAP addition.
September 98.
September 98, which we would have 7,636 if the PELs manage to catch up with what their deficit is, the difference in the trend. And then the following year, 76. So basically, there's a 40 student difference, and then they demonstrate a decline, just like any other peak. You go on up an incline, you go down a decline.
Vicki, we talked about this too, and I think that the one piece of data that was rather chilling to both Dr. Sugar and myself was when we went and visited the municipalities. When this PEL was done originally, and the growth was shown in Towmenson, when we found out the number of housing starts, it was different even from what we had had. The same thing is true with Montgomery. So if I remember one thing about when Ed Koch came and talked about the PEL projections, and that was a long evening, he said that as you get further out, it gets more and more difficult to make judgments about it. And the interesting point is, even in our analysis last year, we found that things had changed, the picture had changed. So I just bring that to your attention as data, because that's what it was, but very much different in the Towmenson area with the number of housing starts.
Okay, well, this PEL is from November of 94. They had hard numbers all the way for the 94-95 year. So basically, they've only had to do any guesswork on the 95, 96, and the 90, forward, as far as incoming years. But I realized the point. Witchwood isn't on the block yet, and I know that there was such absolute certainty that Witchwood would be developed and opening up by now. So we have various factors. I see that our kindergarten enrollment the last 2 years, their projections were based on the kindergarten years all the way through being over 1,000 students. And they have not topped over 1,000 students, and that follows through as they project through the classroom guidelines. I'm not saying that we can do nothing, but I have reasons to wonder why modulars is considered so much more disruptive than placing 11 classrooms at one single school and then redistricting throughout to get the students to them. I don't understand the disruption factor coming in on one and not the other.
Oh, well, I want to talk to you about that. How do we provide relief in every school if we don't do boundary changes?
Well, in some cases, the modulars are going to be placed in schools where the need is actually supposedly going to be met for the enrollment that's there. I mean, I just wondered why disruption was a disqualifier for modulars, and yet your recommendation fits all the criteria. It isn't disqualified because of the disruption factor. Because I've been through modulars and I've been through the opening of new schools or new spaces in one location, and as a parent, I thought it had more far-reaching effects when you were dealing with a centralized building, new centralized space.
It's air conditioned, and I suppose anybody would prefer air conditioned over non-air conditioned. That's the big distinction. The critical thing here, though, is to agree that we have a problem and we need to take action. I'm suggesting to you there are a number of ways to accomplish the kind of relief that we need, and that this board is going to make that decision. My plea is simply make the decision.
Okay, well, that was your third preference, and I'd just like to say that I believe it was, the reasons for disqualifying it should be reconsidered as we move forward. That in fact could bring even quicker relief as far as, you'll have Nash gaining 2 modulars, so I don't really see a whole lot of relief in this for 97, 98, but with the modulars being able to be put in place in a few more areas, we could actually bring classrooms online a bit quicker with that plan. And if we were to evaluate that, I'd like to say with the 98, on this sheet that we have in front of us, attached to your agenda, the one that's elementary classroom utilization straight line for the 98-99 year. because this is the one where we're seeing classroom needs of 14 additional rooms. Okay. As I understood it, this was being drawn out in order to provide a picture of what our classroom needs would be based on the guidelines as you explained them earlier and as they stand today. However, I'd like to say that it seems to me that in many cases it's basically rewriting the classroom guidelines in a downward fashion in some areas. I see the 4th grade class at Gwinnett Square with 101 students being divided into 5 classrooms. That would be a ratio of 20.2 students. So you'd have 4 classes of 20, 1 of 21 for 4th grade, whereas a 4 classroom ratio allocation would be 25.25. So you'd have your 3 classes of 25 and 1 of 26, which still fell within the 4th through 6th guidelines. Similarly, if you move across to the Culp School, 78 students, or is that 78 or 76? 76 students divided by 4 classrooms, giving you a class size of 19 each, as opposed to 25.3 if it were within the 3 classrooms. So we're looking at, I've got quite a few of those here.
98, 99.
I could go across where I'm seeing classroom guidelines being developed that are below our standing minimums.
Well, I don't see the 4th in Culp that you say brings it down to 22 or 23. It shows 3 here.
No, if you go across the Culp, 4th
Which grade?
On that same, the 98, 99,
Which grade?
4th grade, Culp, 76 students.
4 classrooms of 76, right.
Right.
I mean, I've just went through some of these since I've opened this up on
Right.
Sunday afternoon, trying to see what there's here to digest. And the same as, you know, we could go through a few of them. There's
Well,
there's
this
a 5th grade class here with 80 students divided into 4. It's adding 4 classrooms to the needs at Gwinnett Square. That's 20 students each. The 3, 8, 26, 27, but as I understood it, 28 was the cutoff line for that grade level. So I would say that if we're going to move forward,
Well, you're working with numbers, Mrs. Shear, that all exceed the guidelines and go into the leeway category. Is that what you're
no,
suggesting?
no, they're actually adding classrooms that take it, they're not even in the margin of error. In other words, your 101 classrooms, Dr. Bose, where we first started with at Gwinnett Square, by classroom guidelines only requires 4, but it's been designated to need 5.
And what do you think the top of the guidelines number is?
It's 28.
Right. Well, that's the 10% leeway I'm talking about.
Right.
It's made the leeway the rule and eliminated the rule.
So what are you eliminating the 10% margin, and you've done all these according
suggesting-
to no more than 25 students in a K through, in a 4 through 6?
This chart you're looking at doesn't even project an increase in enrollment. It's a straight line projection, using the same kids we now have, moving them up a grade.
But I thought as we read this, we were supposed to interpret that these were the needs that would be needed for the numbers that are placed here.
We took it on straight class size guidelines. If you recall what I said in the beginning, the K-3 guidelines are 19 to 23. Then I spoke about the leeway being 10%. The same with the 4 through 6. The class size guidelines are 22 to 25. I talked about the leeway of 10%. If you would like me to use the upper number, because I was using between 22 and 25 as we had before. If you want it, pushed forward.
Okay.
Dr. Sugar had done that for you and had given you these charts in
You got
June.
those in June.
Right.
We have those, we can give them back to you.
Okay, I thought they were within what the guidelines were anywhere within.
I did take the guidelines, the straight guidelines,
Well, then if-
22 to 25
And 19 is to 23.
and 23.
That's why we're seeing this like
What,
this.
Vicki, I might want to, maybe I'll point out, and it's unfortunate, if you go back to the page where we have the PEL projections, it only has for the 2 years, the year we're in or next
Right.
year, what it would, if you just took your pencil below the 74.29, and for the next year put, the mid-range has 75.49,
Right.
okay? Then at 98 is 76.36, and then 99 is 76.76. And I believe we're looking at 98, so to give you an idea, mid-range PEL forecast 76.36,
That's right.
and this number is penciling at 76.04. So I mean, I look at it and say that, that they're coming up with a pretty, as
Oh,
far as number of students, it's
Number
a
of students,
pretty,
what I'm
pretty
saying, but
fair
when
number.
you're looking at, what we're focusing on is the number of classrooms,
Classrooms, I
which
know.
we're going to need. And
Mm-hmm.
in fact, as I was interpreting this in the past, is when it fell with up to 28. If you recall, we've
Right.
received these sheets before,
Mm-hmm.
and it was written that this was, the cutoff was 23 for this, and the other, or 25, and the other was 28.
If you want us to pull those other charts for you, we have those available.
Well,
Dr. Sugar's
We'll
in the audience.
send them to you
We
Friday.
can send them.
We'll send them Friday.
Okay, because I just like, mainly because if I'm gonna review this, whether I wanna agree with your option or whether my instincts are that the modulars, to me, really meets the needs of the students faster, less expensively, and with the least amount of disruption, particularly if we're talking with NAP and NASH, and Gwyn Nor, I believe, used to have more modulars than it does now, didn't it, Art, at one time?
Never,
5 years?
never.
No, 5 years ago? No?
6 modulars at Gwyn Nor currently.
Mrs. Shear, I ask, as you think about modulars, you think about how many per school? Because we're suggesting that the growth crunch is in every grade as new people move in, not merely with school beginners at the kindergarten age, but they move in with some 5th graders, some 6th graders, some 4th graders, some 3rd graders, et cetera. That the number of modulars, if divided among all the schools, doesn't help us if we want to provide relief in all 7 grades, kindergarten through 6. If we put 3 modulars at a school, we're only helping 3 grades.
Well, what are you doing with 11 total new classrooms amongst 13 schools? You're taking 20 children out of each school. That's a big help? I mean, you're still talking 11 classrooms. This is, right here on the recommendation of the Facilities Committee, was 16 modulars. That's what I have within the Facilities Committee that just was presented to us about a month and a half ago when they went through their months of evaluating classroom needs.
Mrs. Shear, I suggested in my opening comments that these are options that have been studied for the preparation of this and presentation at this meeting and the subsequent dialogues, that they were not the only. So if somebody has a good idea, there's no pride in ownership here of any of these options or suggestions or ideas. The main point I'm trying to make, and I'll make it maybe one more time before that discussion next Tuesday, is that we must make a decision to do something and make the decision so that something can be in place at the right time.
And why don't I just
I
add,
agree.
let me interject here. No, that's fine. And I said it at the last meeting, I'll say it again. I mean, I've heard 5 board members clearly tell me they did not support the kindergarten center.
Right.
I've also heard 5 board members tell me they didn't support a new elementary school at Keenest Road. As
Right.
far as I'm concerned, that's what I've heard. Individually, you've come to me at different times, different board members, and we've talked. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think anybody wants to talk about year-round schools. I think that's pretty well handled too. I think that there are probably few on here that are still open for debate, and we'll open it up tonight, and we'll try to come to some consensus on Tuesday night.
Yeah. I want to apologize, Dr. Bose. My frustration is showing in that I'm trying to follow the rationale on why this one didn't bring disruption, one did, versus the idea that the 11 classrooms at NAP is going to bring, resolve this problem versus 16 modulars not doing the job. I just was having a hard time why one's being,
I understand that, I think we're all frustrated.
interpreted differently. And
And,
I don't know, we've seen before you were here, this community has been through redistricting almost every year without fail. If it isn't at the elementary level, it's at the middle school level. I mean, we had our junior high reduced down to 9th grade, and we've had the rotation of the 3 different elementary schools coming online. And through that redistricting, by the way, we'd ended up opening up one school well over functional capacity, while some of the others were misjudged as far as the enrollment standards are. And when we're talking about dealing with a peak of 1999, to have this online in 98, I'm just really very concerned that we may not even meet the need and yet create a great deal of disruption in the meantime because of it.
And have been
And
sensitized
that.
by others about our previous history with boundary changes. And I know that can be disruptive, I've been through it elsewhere in myself. That was one of the reasons that the kindergarten center was attractive, because it requires no boundary changes whatsoever.
But everyone felt that they were going through a boundary change for every kindergartner that had to go back to their home school for first grade.
I understand that.
So
And that's
it's a matter of technical
That's a dead issue.
difference.
But no one has ever experienced a kindergarten center, so there are no experts except those that have, and have talked to people who have, and know that a great deal of the apprehension dissipates after they know people who have done it and have learned from their experiences. But that's a dead issue. And so we look to another issue that, again, is the least disruptive. The NAP as a central location means that the kind of boundary changes that are made are incrementally small in each district. As you move the children closer to NAP, they have to occupy the new additional spaces and reduce concomitantly the enrollments in the school districts from which the kids are moved as they move. It's almost like a domino effect. I know it's confusing, and I know eventually the board will have to see evidence of how this might work if it's ever a serious consideration. But again, I'll suggest to you that among all the things studied, it became the more favorable consideration, but it doesn't have to be the one that the board approves. I urge you to approve one that gets the kind of relief that we need when we have those children amongst us who have to be housed according to our own standards and what we believe best complements our effort to educate.
Art, when would you begin construction? When would you need to begin actual construction in order to meet your September 98 deadline?
98 deadline?
The September 98 opening date, when would at least,
One of the things, if you look
In
at the
general.
NAP plan, and it's only a plan, and we've talked about it long and hard, the addition is freestanding, and that will be least disruptive. But it will take 2 summers to do some of the renovations. For example, you build, once the new IMC is built, you move out of the area next to the cafeteria, which is the existing IMC, and if you're familiar with it, it has no walls, it's an open area, and you enlarge the cafeteria. But it's gonna take 2 summers to do the interior work and make it least disruptive. So we really need to move quickly, quite frankly, if we're gonna implement something similar to the NAP addition. But we need to move quickly to do anything. There's no quick method with the approvals that we have to go through. If we're gonna do modulars, we need to realize now we're gonna do them with the exception of the Nash modular, which was kind of easy. We need to do them, the rest of them, we need to do for September 98.
well, there's only 2 in this plan. Under this plan here, there would only be 2 added for the
Right,
97, 98.
and we're saying we can do that for 97, those 2.
And all the rest of the classroom
they're-
needs would wait.
They're pretty clean, and they're not gonna involve, that's not gonna involve a great deal of imagination or work at Nash. I mean, it's a modular corridor that hooks onto the end of the building and gives us 2 additional classrooms, contingent upon approval by Tillmenson. But when you look at the other areas where we're adding modulars, you know, it's a consideration that's gonna take, I mean, for Inglewood, takes a lot of land at Inglewood. We need to have discussions about that. I mean, that's, you know, that's not a big property. And one of the reasons we like the Knapp addition is it does not infringe on our playing fields off to the right side, if you will. This comes out in the front of the building. And it's just, you know, it's just a natural tie-in with corridors coming out there. You actually do 12 classrooms to net 11, because if you look at the main part of the building on the right side, you jump from 10 to 12 because we take classroom 11 to make our connecting link as we come out. But I mean, we need to start no matter what we do. We need to get an architect appointed, and we need to get on with the design, and we need to start doing the land development plans that have to be done. They're not easy, as you know.
Right, and that's where we'd find out what the, a closer ballpark on the figures, I assume, because these numbers, the numbers in here weren't given to you by an architect, correct?
No, but I'm pretty proud of my numbers. I don't miss
Okay.
very often.
Art, what I was trying to find out is when would construction on the property be, not necessarily inside, excavation.
On
On land,
the
would
Knapp-
it need
on
to,
the Knapp
would it need to
property,
affect 2 school years, or would it, would you not be beginning on-site
We would
work
wanna-
until
we
this
would-
end of the school year?
We would hope to break ground at Knapp on or about June 15th.
Okay, so you would say
But
the
that's
construction would be
ambitious. That's
going
this coming
through one,
June.
but you're talking construction occurring during one school year.
One school year, 2 summers, if you will.
That's what I'm just trying to find out.
Now, with the Nash modulars, we need to go before the township. We need to, first of all, appoint an architect. We need to go before the township. We need to bid those modulars, have them constructed and set in site this summer so that we would have them for the opening of the school year.
Right, and that, this also said 4, in the facilities report, it talked to 4 at Nash.
Now, I talked to 2 at Nash.
Well,
We've always talked 2 at Nash. We already have 5. In my report to the board, or to Tom Sugar, excuse me, that you were copied on April 29th, 1996, I talked about 2 at Nash, 2 at Montgomery, 4 at Knapp, 4 at Inglewood, and 4 at North Wales. And that's after an extensive study to see, and quite frankly, I need to be honest with you, the 4 at Knapp strain the core facilities.
well, I believe that we have schools throughout this district that really, if we can stop putting up, focusing on putting up new buildings, we have many buildings that need our attention and repairs, and bringing some parity as best we can. I mean, we can't certainly turn an old building into a totally new one, but I think that we have a lot of needs in this district.
It's not a
As
lot,
far as
but there are some
upgrading
buildings.
our buildings, a little at Knapp and a little at Gwynn North, some at Oak Park.
3 good
All of those
examples.
facilities,
We have a very, very substandard IMC at Gwynn North for the number of classrooms we have.
right, that needs some renovations, maybe not extreme renovations, but they certainly need some upgrading, and it would be nice if we could at least begin
No
to
different
focus
than your- no different
on
than your
updating
house.
those. And I guess as we see here, if we're talking Inglewood, Knapp, Nash, Montgomery, and North Wales, which is from this facilities report that I have here, Art,
Quote you later.
you've actually reached to those schools which are
to you.
projecting needs pretty significantly right there with those classrooms, considering that we're only talking 11, that's not going to solve all their problems anyway. There's no one that's gonna convince me putting 11 classrooms at Knapp is gonna leave us with every classroom within
But this, you know,
these
this
classroom
isn't without-
guidelines for the peak period of our growth. I would expect that there will be a time when, yes, there'll be plenty of,
This isn't without
latitude.
some difficult placements. For an example, at Montgomery Elementary School, we had 2 that we took away.
right?
We proposed putting them back. It's on a playground area. It's, you know, it's not an ideal situation.
We took up the foundation for them?
Yeah, because we hit so much rock out there, the foundation was simple, it was I-beams. We got very creative,
Oh, well, I mean,
and, you know, that has to go back in, but we moved those 2 to Ben
Okay.
Brook.
Okay, we need to take a break. We need to change the tape. I would like to ask the board, I think it could turn into a longer night than I expected. I'd like to take a real brief executive session while we change the tape. I actually have another issue. I just talked to Dr. Bose. There is one short personnel issue I'd just like to cover. We'll come right back in 10 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute break. Ask the board to go to conference room C for a short executive session. We'll be right back.
And evaluate this very carefully, and I guess we'll be seeing more information, perhaps based
Sure.
on what our standing guidelines are,
Sure.
so that we can take a good look at this. We try to address our growth needs in the most responsible fashion.
Okay, more questions from this side. David?
Well, in an attempt to provide you all with a complete public service, let me give you a completely different point of view. And that is that I still believe that we need another elementary school, and that this is just the plans that have been presented continue to be a giant Band-Aid, as I think we've also done with the high school. In 1998-99, we will need 14 additional classroom spaces. An addition to one school would provide us with 11. Modulars at another would provide us with 2 more. That would be 13. That still leaves us needing 1. In addition to that, we have no art and music rooms anywhere within our elementary school groupings. And if we intend to do anything about technology laboratories for elementary schools, there is no space for that. There is no space. An elementary school is what I think is required here to fix the problem once and for all. And the issue of redistricting, I think, with some type of hope that it might not happen again, would be accepted by all to make sure that the space was required. Now, in light of the fact that this is never going to happen, let me also say that I think we should give Mr. Wood permission tonight to immediately order the modular classrooms that he needs to initiate the plan that was brought forward by the administration. And we should certainly give Dr. Bose and his plan, or the plan that was come up jointly with the administration for the addition to the other school for the 11 classrooms, as quick approval as we possibly can, so we can begin to at least apply some Band-Aids to our problems. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Don?
Yeah, I think we've, a lot of it's been brought up before. I guess the only questions I have are kind of directed to Art. In the purchasing of modulars, you say that you could, at this date, in November, the actual meeting wouldn't be towards the end of November, but by this date in November, by the end of November, you could still order and have in place 2 modulars for Nash.
It would be done, it's going to be a tight schedule. You need to first approve an architect, and then we need to begin immediately with the land development process.
No, modulars.
For modulars.
For modulars, okay. Architect.
Yeah, you need to have an architect, need to go labor and industry, need to have all the necessary approvals. And the most important approval would be Tolmanson Township. As soon as we have that approval, or concurrent with recognizing that we'll be granted approval, we would bid the modular classrooms. It would be modular corridors and modular classrooms.
If the board so elected to, in place of doing the addition to NAP, to go the modular route entirely, is it conceivable that all the modulars could be?
I don't think it is. I think there's just too many approvals that have to be gotten. I mean, Inglewood and Nash, of course, are both in the same township. Knapp is the borough of Lansdale. Montgomery, of course, is Montgomery Township and North Wales Borough. But to go through that process and make it for September, now, if we want to open late, which is not that popular, we did that at Culp, and that was strictly because of the time that it took to get township or municipal approval. And we opened in the month of November at Culp. But I would say, I would have a better comfort level doing it for September of '98.
Is the property, let's assume, it's an assumption on it, if we assume we go with the modular concept, is the property for the schools, for all the modulars available, and is the property of such, acceptable to modulars? I mean, we won't run into a place where the ground is given away or something?
No, the grades are in place to do that, and that's one of the things we looked at prior to recommending them to you. But there is a possibility we'll get into a full land development plan because we don't have adequate parking at some of those buildings. And that may cause, depending on the municipality, that may cause us to have to increase. I mean, a perfect example is both Inglewood and North Wales, where we're limited. But we never know until we go before the municipality what requirements they set forth.
Okay, I just want to get some ideas relative to that. I guess my thought process is, a new elementary school sounds nice, but it's very expensive and a lot of, I'm trying to find how we get, the expression is more bang for the buck. If we went with the modulars, that would, and for the same amount of money that maybe even in that addition would cost us, we could then modernize or upgrade some of our older elementary schools where they do need the upgrading, even the IMCs for the technology and all those other things that we need. And maybe those dollars are better expended in those areas to bring all the elementaries up to today's level they should be brought up to, rather than putting all the money in NAP into that. That's some of the thought process I'm going through. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any more questions from this side? John?
Can I?
Sure, go ahead, Dave.
Art's the price tag on a new elementary school still about 10 in today's climate?
We had, I believe we used the number 12.4, 12.2, or 12.4.
In today's climate,
In
because
today's-
we came in much lower than
today's
that
climate.
in the last
Well,
two.
considering we had the land, we didn't have the land for Walton, but basing it on our experience at both Walton and Bridle, we anticipate about 12.2.
Thanks. John? No? Okay, over to this side. Donna?
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Okay, Dr. Bose, when you added the aides this year, I'm under the impression that the aides we hired were in fact folks with, that are teachers, bona fide teachers that accepted those aides positions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Has there been any consideration to maybe combining some ideas here, such as the placement of modulars, and in some areas throughout the school district where you have 29, 30 kids, that you in fact give them their own aide for the full time? An aide on an aide's contract, not in the bargaining unit, not a teacher's contract, but a bona fide teacher willing to accept an aide's position and give them full-time, all-day help. And because I think sometimes in some areas here, there could be some savings by providing personnel as opposed to hard buildings, as opposed to bricks and mortar that we actually, and then with ebbs and flows as we go in and out of growth from municipality to municipality or school to school. You can see some schools seem fine, some are heavy. Somehow that meets supply and demand instead of putting up a building somewhere and, okay, everybody shift. Trying a little harder to tailor-make accommodations here by additional personnel, modulars where needed, and I really like Don's idea of any possible leftover dollars or dollars to be reconsidered by not spending on a hard building, be used to upgrade, in the areas of technology and also the facilities that are hurting in the areas of library, cafeteria, etc. But I don't see a combination. Okay, you try to approach it here, hiring and placement of classroom aides, and it was discarded based on the inability to project. That's all we're doing tonight. All we're doing tonight is projecting. How hard can that be? I mean, maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but we're projecting nonetheless. And I think there's savings in human beings here this time around as opposed to hard buildings. I mean, if I had a choice between my daughter being, or one of my kids being transferred or shifted or moved around, I'd rather see, 2 teachers in a class of 30 than to have her moved. She'd rather stay or he'd rather stay.
Well, the way we've used aides does give some relief to the large class size situations we have. And we sent those 11 aides where the sizes were the largest and the conditions were those most in need. Now, the aide, though, was assigned to a grade in a school. And so the aide worked with 3 or 4 teachers, depending how many sections there were in that grade. So it wasn't an aide full-time with a teacher, but an aide full-time with a grade of teachers sharing the aide.
Okay, that's what I'm saying here. We're not looking at sharing. We're looking at, lightening up here and adding more help by providing a full classroom with another teacher.
One aide, one teacher? Is that what you're saying?
Or a better ratio than what we have now, absolutely.
As an alternative.
And then I think the classrooms, and I don't want to mention this woman's,
It's certainly another option that can be
the option being
evaluated.
using personnel as opposed to bricks and mortar.
And if we're talking about a healthier portion of an aide's time than what we now have, it increases in possible positive impact.
It's an idea, it's just something that could be, maybe Taylor makes some decisions to, addressing supply and demand as opposed to some universal decision here that I don't think is going to fit everybody. I don't want to mention the woman's name, she's a mother from Nash with an autistic child. I think too, we got to look at some of these classrooms where that classroom may have a child in it that has a special need. And, those classrooms are sharing aides as if it was regular ed. Is that correct? Can more consideration be given to those classrooms in additional support,
Donna, can
where
you
there is a
repeat
special
that?
child in that class?
You mean the special ed aides that we have? Or the
No.
regular ed aides? Because we
Right.
utilize our special education aides when students go out for specials or whatever. You mean the special ed aide also being a support in a classroom?
If you have 2 classes of 30, but one class has 1 or 2 children with autism in that class in certain periods of the day, that to me is not an equal class. This one is more heavily weighted, it's more labor intensive, and I think the distribution of aides should reflect that. You don't see that through here, and I'm getting that information. If it's incorrect, I'm sorry. I promised a mother that I would address that tonight as we talked about this. I'll share her name with you later if there's a problem. But I think that has to be taken into consideration too. As you look at all these classrooms here, it's not clear to me where you have special ed children integrated into a regular ed, mainstreamed for certain parts of a day. That's not obvious here. And I think that changes the weight, class weight. But anyway, Doctor, if something could be considered, not only, I'm looking towards modulars, but also looking at the increase of personnel directly into the classroom, and somehow doing a better job at tailor-fitting supply and demand needs at each school. Some schools don't need any changes at all, and some need more than others. So. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Sharice.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. I think before I start the bulk of my comments, I'd just like to clarify for the public a couple of things. Out of the list that you see before you in our packet tonight of the discarded options, to my knowledge, this board has only received a report of some type, a direct report of some type, on three of the issues. The hiring and placement of classroom aides, of course, occurred at the beginning of the year when we were given the report on the need to hire aides for some of our classes that were overcrowded. The placement of the 16 modulars, the second option, or the third option listed there. This board received a report at the June 11th meeting from a report that was drafted in April of this year, which outlined the need for 16 modulars. But to my knowledge, I cannot recall any public discussion of that report. It was given to us simply for our knowledge only. The kindergarten center, when we received it in our packets, it was as much news to us as it was to the public. And the new elementary school on Keenest Road, I never had a conversation with anybody in regards to building a new elementary school since I was elected here last November. Having said that, I was very surprised to see, as Vicki, Mrs. Shear already noted this evening, that one of the items listed that was discarded was the placement of the 16 modulars because of such a major disruption. However, in the recommendation before us tonight, if we in fact do this addition at Knapp, once again, the elementary schools in and around Montgomery, that being Bridle Path, Montgomery, and Gwynn-Nor, would once again be majorly disrupted. And I don't support that at all. I think Montgomery has been disrupted enough. There are children that have moved 3 times already since they have first entered our school system. They've started out at Montgomery, they were switched to Gwynn-Nor, then some of them went over to Bridle Path. And I think it's enough is enough. I personally think for the money that's being projected for this technically new school at Knapp, you are going to take the current enrollment from 473, and if you have 11 classrooms or even 12 classrooms with 25 children in it, that's an extra 300 students. You've got a completely different school. Not to mention the disruption from Montgomery, Bridle Path, and Gwynn-Nor again, and those neighborhoods and those neighborhood children that would be fed into Knapp. I don't support it. For the money, I say we go with the 16 modulars. And I say, Art, you start yesterday, getting all the approvals that you need, all the direction from the boroughs and the townships that you need to get these started and finished by September of '97. This is not a new issue here.
Can't be done.
This is not a new issue, Art.
I'm just saying.
And
it's
you've
not
constructed
humanly
more
possible.
things in this district than more people have the ability or enjoyment to construct in a year, in an entire career. And if anybody in this district can get the job done, Art, it should be you. With all the connections that you have throughout this district, if you can't get it done, Art, then maybe this district, maybe the board needs to get you extra help to get it done. But I'm tired. I'm tired of having, this elementary enrollment problem has been a plague over the heads of this district since I moved here 4.5 years ago. The boards before us did nothing. They spent the last 4 years debating a second high school. The elementary grades, the elementary school issue was never a front burner issue.
We opened 3 elementary schools since '91.
I know that, Vicki, but we're still in a problem today, obviously.
But we're not here.
Excuse me,
That's what we're
not a
talking about,
problem.
Mrs.
This is
Speaker.
a situation.
We're discussing it now.
And it's a situation that this board needs to address.
And we
It needs
are.
to address the right way.
We're
And I
trying.
say the right way is this, for the money, do the modulars, and for gosh sakes, take a look at Knapp and give Knapp and the other schools the renovations and the improvements that they need to bring them up to par. I don't think you spend $4 million on one school and a couple modulars at another when you can do 16 modulars for $1.6 million, and then take a look at using the bulk of the money that's left over to improve the IMCs, to take a look at doing tech labs at our elementary schools, and upgrading our elementary facilities that way. What you're building here is another elementary school because of the large piece of property, and I don't think it's, all you're doing is disrupting Montgomery again, and I don't support it. The projections, to piggyback on Mrs. Shear's comments, Judy, I would like something a lot more specific on the special ed classroom utilization. I'd like to know, how many children are utilizing those classrooms per day? Just per day. How many classrooms?
How many students are in the seminar rooms and the conference rooms? How many students are included?
When they're being utilized, how many children are in them? because not every gifted child is pulled out for gifted every day. I don't believe that every learning support child is pulled out every day. So, I mean, there are those cases, and I know there's others that are.
I guess I'm a little confused as to what direction you want me to take. Are you asking how many students are included in every special education classes with a deduction from the regular ed component, or just a straight line of how many students per learning disabilities class in, say, Knapp Elementary?
You confuse me.
Well, imagine how I feel having to do it. What I'm trying to get at is, do you want just the numbers? Because it's very easy for me in what I gave you for classroom utilization to just run down and say, in this part-time learning disabilities class, we have 15 students. My question is that what you want to see, or do you want to see where the grade levels are we're pulling those kids from?
No, Judy, okay, let's take Bridle Path just for an example. You have two full-time teachers, 2 half-time teachers, and a quarter-time teacher. Is that right?
Are you looking at the classroom utilization chart?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to know how many children do those individual teachers see there on a daily basis?
I can give you that, that's not a problem.
Okay? Just on a daily basis. How they break it up, of course, is completely dependent upon their IEPs, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm not asking you to do that, but I would just like to know how many children do these individual people see? Okay? If they're full-time versus whatever. And really, but that's my sentiment, Mr. Clemens. And, you know, I guess I get a little frustrated when, you know, the board is always the one that's blamed for not taking action. And yet we have a list of options here that the board's never had a conversation about. And, you know, not in public. Not in public, and maybe we've talked about different options between ourselves, never as a majority in public, and I get really frustrated with a lot of the options that come forward. But that's how I feel, and I think we should just go with the modulars. Let's get us through our peak years at the elementary level and be done with it. Thank you.
Might as well keep going. Bill?
Well, I guess the first thing I have to say is I thought the kindergarten center was a good idea. Oh, just calm down. And the reason I did see the error of my ways, okay?
Error of your ways.
But my thinking was, I've been here through 3 redistricting, and I thought that the parents would really be against the redistricting and would prefer this. So to me, it doesn't really matter, and if the parents are the ones that think that the kindergarten center is the bad idea, and they would prefer it to be redistricted if we do modulars and additions or new schools, it's fine with me, as far as a principle of redistricting versus the kindergarten center. So that's your call, as far as I'm concerned, as to what's the most important issue. I just misread what I thought was important to you. Thank you, Pat. Pat said I misread again. The mood of the public. We all? So, if that's the way it is, I can still argue for it, but I'm not going to mention it anymore. You can all leave now. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. But a few comments. One is, I believe we have to do something. And I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but we do have to do something. I do believe we need square footage, not just aides in the classroom. I believe when it comes to class, numbers of students in a class, the size does matter. And I want to listen, is really what I want to do, is I want to listen to all of you people and find out what the mood is and what the ideas are, because I just don't have an answer right now. So I'll just pass and listen, and someday I hope it comes to a vote soon. I'll make a decision when it's time. Thank you.
Bill? Pat?
Well, I can't add much more than what's already been said. I know you just wanted to have a few comments tonight, and we spent about 2 hours on it already. Couple questions. Dr. Bose, you mentioned the fact that and I'm asking, are enrollments increasing by an average of 250 students a year?
Rather than looking at the projections and arguing about those and when they were done, I simply looked at the last 10 years and computed the average increase of the last 10 years and came up with the 259.
Okay, and that's 259 is district-wide.
From our own experience, for elementary schools.
That's district-wide, right?
Elementary schools.
Right, elementary, yeah.
Right.
But it's district-wide, we're not...
No, it didn't include the high school and the middle school.
No. I'm saying that 259 is spread out over all our elementary schools.
Correct.
I'm concerned why, if you discarded item number 3, the placement of the modulars at Inglewood, Nat, Montgomery, Nash, and North Wales, that would require boundary changes. Looking at these numbers, if that's where our growth is right now, why would we have to go, we just redid the boundaries in March or April, why would we have to redo them again if that's where our numbers are?
That was for middle school. No, those boundaries, that's not what it is.
All right, middle school, I'm sorry, right, we did middle school. But I don't know why, if we already are over student guidelines.
I think this is helpful to look at.
I was looking at that.
All right, and see how many other schools have class size dilemmas other than the 4 that would get the 16 modules.
Okay, well, there was 5 that was originally projected for 16 modulars. Inglewood, Nat, Montgomery, Nash, and North Wales. And looking at these circled items, they're the majority of the ones, they're the ones that seem to have the most problem right now. Also, I remember in your initial, in fact, I have a copy of your initial presentation of October the 8th, you mentioned number 2, that the building is to be occupied in the fall of 1997. This was on the Kinder Center now, but I'm asking the question in relationship to this addition. It would be necessary to waive reimbursement in the filing of Plan Con documents. Would that still be the case if we?
No.
Okay.
That was, Mr. Mosey, only if
you would go Plan
it was a high priority to have something in September of 97. Not opting for reimbursement would give us all the additional time that Plan Con takes.
Okay. I know you stated that in your presentation of a couple weeks ago, but there was no mention in this new plan, and I just wonder if that was just an omission or if we were going to go Plan Con.
We would go Plan Con.
Okay, we would go Plan Con. Okay, and is there any reimbursement at all from the state if we use modulars? No. No? And just one more thing. I'm looking at the breakdown, Art, that you have on the modulars. 180,000 for 2 modulars, 20 for the corridor, 10,000 for electric, and 21 contingency and architectural, 231. If we divide that by 2, we're looking at 115,500. Is that pretty much what it cost us for each modular?
I've always used, most recently, $100,000, and this is just the budget, and the architectural is typically above and beyond the $100,000.
Right. I know you do that, so I appreciate that.
If you put the modular corridor with the classrooms, it rounds to about $100,000 each. The electric adds to that depending on how complicated it is. National electric would be a little bit complicated.
So by me taking that 231 and dividing it in half, coming up 115.5, and multiplying it by 16 is gonna give me pretty much what 16 modulars would cost.
When you're doing two, you can figure maybe 110, 115 apiece. When you get into the four, the price gets a little less expensive
Okay.
because
All
you're
right.
feeding
That's
four
what I'm-
classrooms off of one card.
Okay.
$100,000 for the four is a good number.
Okay. That would include everything then?
That would be exclusive of the architect and the contingency.
Okay. All right. Since we're gonna discuss it again next week, that's all I have right now.
Okay. Anybody else? Round two
Just-
before I go.
Just real quick, Dennis, the 11 aides we just hired, average, how much did they cost us? Per aide?
I think approximately about $10,000. Mrs. Miller would back me on that, I think.
Yeah.
But they were
$10,000
part-time, full-time?
Per aide.
Full-time.
Full-time aide, it's $10,000. Does this include benefits?
Yes.
And they're on what type of a contract? What was it, the arrangement is called what?
They're on a contract they're here for 1 year, 1 school year, for the rest of the year.
Okay, and the contract's year to year?
Yes.
With no promise of renewal, no any?
That's correct.
Okay. So even if at $10,000 apiece, if we put 43 of them in there right now,
Right, you're looking at $430,000.
and then there's change left over to fix all the,
There you go.
to upgrade all the facilities, cafeterias, technology, you know, just something to consider.
Tom, if you want to say, just because of what's been said. I'd like to be,
Okay, we're back at round two.
I think that from all that's been made, I think we're all on the same page as a board here. And I'd just like to see, when we take this list for the 98, 99 year, Judy, and if you actually apply the guidelines that everything else has been done by, rather than having 23 as the maximum through 3rd grade and using the 25 that we've been dealing with, and rather than breaking it out with requirements of no classes being over 25, 4 through 6, and use the 28 cutoff.
The leeway.
On it, yes.
The leeway. That's
Yeah,
what you're
just
saying.
where that would end up. And I'd say when we get that, that gives us an idea of just how many modulars we really need to be prepared for the 98, 99 school year. Art, when we come back for the work session, could you let us know, I know there's been some challenges made as to how many you could bring on board. Could you give some thought to that too, as to which would be the best schools to deal with the most urgency? I mean, anything over 2 is giving us more than what the proposed recommendation was for 97, 98, and then how we'd be able to follow up for the 98, 99 school year. And then in conjunction with that, so that we can fully give since we're now having to pull out this whole idea of modulars to get a full evaluation of it, if you understand, Tom, then we have to build the case, if either that or bring forward the information that's gonna make us all feel comfortable with burying it. I'd like Judy, if you'd consider that, since I think the point being made that for the most part, the most urgent needs here are where the modulars are able to be accommodated, with the exception of Gwyn-Nor. However, I know we have some student body there that's using significant classrooms, which are actually not within the Gwyn-Nor boundaries, but are rather located there for particular needs, and they've often been at other schools also. I don't recommend.
There's a legal
students-
requirement on that.
Okay.
3-year legal requirement before you move those classes.
Is that what happened? So now we're seeing these needs, and there's way more classes there, and those students aren't really within the Gwyn-Nor boundaries. They're being bused from all over the
Our
district.
full-time learning support.
Same with Montgomery and Walton Farm, right?
Yes.
Sure.
There are classes
3
for the
years.
emotional support, classes for the autistic support, and each of them comes with a 3-year that you have to keep the class before moving it.
I can
And that's state
appreciate that.
regulations.
That's so they're not treated like bouncing balls inside
Absolutely.
school districts. Just unfortunate that where we've placed them is perhaps one of our tighter
I'd like for the same
areas.
standards to apply to our regular ed children too in our neighborhood schools.
Well, how long have these students been here? I know we just moved the classes to Bridal,
This is their
to
second year.
Walton Farm.
Second year.
This is the second year, so in the 98, 99 school year?
I think you already have it. You've heard
Is that
it all.
school air conditioned?
You've heard all the arguments.
When
We're
was
getting
air
new
conditioned?
arguments on Tuesday. Could be.
But they have to move to somewhere.
I know that, but is that school air conditioned?
Which
Because-
school?
Gwyn-Nor.
Gwyn-Nor.
Okay, I thought the special needs, many of those students are best placed in them. Air-conditioned schools, okay. I didn't think it was, that's why I was wondering if there was.
Modular classrooms are.
I know the modulars would be. That would bring a relief there. But at any rate, if we could consider those aspects, those the student bodies that are in here being taken into consideration, because in some places, we do have classrooms occupied that are not really not really there because they're within the boundaries. T1 is one at Montgomery. There's nothing that says, there's no real advantage except for those few students that are actually within Montgomery's boundaries as to whether they're there or if they're at a school that's under-enrolled. And so what I'm looking is to bring a reasonable picture to the modular alternative. And if that could be
Just so
achieved
we
for when we meet, because
understand.
we do need a quick decision and we need to
But you
consider
need to
all this.
understand that this decision was made on a very lengthy analysis of each building that I gave to you as a board, with lots of questions. So there's no other buildings. What you're seeing here are the only buildings that can accommodate modular classrooms.
Right, I have all this.
Right, we can't stray from, well, in the report, and I'll see if you don't have your copy, this is very helpful, April 29, 96, because I included the questions that we asked before determining where we could put modulars.
Right.
So, I mean, if there's a building, that has a need and is not in this list, we cannot put modular classrooms.
Okay, I understand that, but then you also know what you could accommodate as a phase-in schedule for the modulars.
I wouldn't want to, it wouldn't be prudent for us to phase in. If you show for whatever.
I don't mean that.
Oh, okay.
I meant, but you may for the first year. In other words, would it be Nash and perhaps NAP that you find is feasible?
Or maybe we'll
Bringing-
find out which municipality is easier.
Right,
to
or
work
maybe
with.
you want to deal with Inglewood and Nash because you're there.
I can guess that for you.
That's what I mean.
There you go.
I don't mean phasing in within the school, I mean phasing which schools,
Can go up.
which modulars you think are reasonable on these phase-in schedules. That's only to bring some picture to this alternative, because we don't really have a package on this here.
All right.
I appreciate
Any
it.
other comments? I just had a couple. I want to go back and revisit what Donna had brought up as far as aids. Judy, did we have any problem? I mean, we didn't really discuss the aids that much. We approved them. Did you have any problems at all when you went out to get aids? And as we all know that they are certified teachers. If next year, and if this board did move towards modulars, let's say, and Art has said it very loudly and clearly tonight, that there may be some modulars that could get finished and others not, if that's the way that this board would go. But would you foresee any problems with hiring more aides? And just, I'd like an update more of how they are working, and really, some people yes, we could call them Band-Aids, but again, I've been into some of the schools, and I think that the system is working, and I just would, maybe a little bit of an update on that.
You want me to find out how they are working in the buildings?
Sure, I'd like some feedback from some of the teachers.
Just one point of clarification also on the aides. Your question was, did we have any...
And parents, I'm sorry.
I believe your question, Mr. Clemens, was, did we have any difficulty hiring them? The answer to that is no, although I will say that the aides that we have throughout our district, not all of them are qualified teachers. Some are and some are not. It is
Okay.
not a requirement of that particular position.
The new 11, though.
The new 11
Yeah, the new
are,
11, right.
yes,
Okay,
they
and
happen
that's
to be.
what this board chose to do.
Right.
The aides in the past were under another board.
That's correct.
We made a commitment to the type of aides that we wanted in this situation. Dr. Miller, when I last checked, when Fred was here, we had like 2,500 applications on file for people wishing to be teachers in the North Penn School District. Where are we at now in terms of applications on file for teachers?
I don't have that exact number, but I can certainly get that for you.
Do you have a thereabouts?
Pardon me?
Do you have a thereabouts?
No, but we have,
Okay.
I would say that's a pretty close number.
2,500.
We get a lot of applications in every single day.
Okay, so 40, say this, I'm going by 43 because that's what we have. So even, you could hire probably 43 tomorrow, certified teachers that wish to get their foot in the door here at the North Penn School District. When you got 2,500 applications on file, is that possible?
We would have the applications from which to screen.
Okay,
Then it would depend on where people were in their whether they had jobs now or whether they were interested in taking positions as aides.
Okay, I just would like an update. I mean, the same thing, we tried, that's something new we tried this year. We also tried the early retirement incentive, and I'd ask that we could keep getting updated on that, how that's working. 2 new programs, something we've tried, and I just would appreciate that when I get a chance.
What aspect of the ERIP are you interested in having so that I know what to do?
Really, that's more Dennis, and he's been...
We've already started the process. Dr. Bose has asked us to provide those names of people that would be eligible, both the carryover from 30 years and the 29-year people, and Dennis is in the process of putting that together. The eligible people for this coming year.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, I get the message. Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Again, what I'd like to do is recap a little bit what I had said earlier. It looks like for sure the November work session will be, that's next Tuesday, as we will revisit the busing, the Penndale. Hopefully, Art, you could get an update to us also as to what will happen as far as the parochial schools. Then we'll move into elementary, then we'll move into the area of finance, and then we'll close out with the framework of the budget for next year. So again, that'll be Tuesday night. Any questions or comments on that?
Mr. President, I just think something needs to be said about the hard work a lot of the administrators, and particularly the cabinet, have been putting into the issues such as the busing situation, the elementary growth. It's been one issue after another without let-up, and it just shouldn't go unnoticed, certainly among the administrators that are sitting around this table tonight. A lot of hours, a lot of time put in on a lot of issues, and I appreciate them.
I do too. Thank you. Okay. At this time, we'll now open our meeting to our audience of citizens. I do plan to keep you to 3 minutes tonight, and let's go. Did anyone call or did anyone call or write in? No. Nobody wrote in? Okay.
Okay, I don't know the procedure. Am I supposed to introduce myself?
State your name and your address, please.
My name is Vivian Heinrich. I'm in Montgomeryville, 114 Devonshire Drive. The issue I see before this board is to take care of space. And I want to say that one more time, space, because I have been inside the Montgomery schools, and I've been inside the classrooms, and I've seen what the difference between having 29 and 30 chairs, tables, desk, whatever you want to call it, versus 20 to 24. I've seen what that does to a room. You have to take out desks or learning centers for math or science or whatever when you start crowding in that amount of space, those amount of students in that amount of space. The other thing I want to bring before this group of people is that, as Don Hill has suggested, and I believe somebody on this side whose name I couldn't read it from back there, but we do need to update the elementary schools. I have not been inside the middle schools, junior highs, or high school, but when we have classrooms that only have one electrical outlet, we cannot talk about technology. When we have classrooms that only have 2 electrical outlets, we cannot talk about technology. That requires electricity. So I don't know how this is going to be financed or anything, but we need space, and we need our facilities upgraded to accommodate what this school district and these people deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, Marla Darcy, 687 Eagle Lane, Upper Gwynedd. And, you know, you better be careful about this more bang for the buck mentality, because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. All right, also, just some comments. One thing that you fail to understand is that when children go in and out of the classroom, it doesn't make life easier for the teacher. It makes more work for the teacher. The teacher has to catch the kids up on what they've missed. It becomes more of a time consumption. So if you think that perhaps that teacher is actually getting away with 10 minutes of time here and 10 minutes of time there, that's not the case. She or he is actually working harder. Also, the idea of even suggesting that a student teacher should be used in a ratio of staff to children is not only insulting, It is outlandish. A student teacher is the second word, and as Dr. Bose will tell you, the teacher, the student teacher, is there to learn from the master teacher. So the master teacher is gaining, yes, some clerical help in the class and some teaching help, but the master teacher is also teaching the student teacher. Okay, so it's not an all-get situation. All right, also, and I think that's a real affront to the professional teachers in this district. Hiring teachers who are fully certified as aides is exploitive. You are taking advantage of a job market where dedicated professionals can't get a job. And I would like to see any one of you live on $10,000 a year and survive on it. And I'm embarrassed to be part of a district that would do that, because that's exploiting a job market. You're taking people who can barely live on what they make, or perhaps are living home with parents. But you, anybody, try and live on $10,000 a year. Go ahead and do it in 1996. You talk about classroom aides alleviating the problem of overcrowding. As Dr. Buzz, I believe, pointed out that that's a temporary solution, that that's not really alleviating the problem altogether. In your page, North Penn School District, November 4th, 1996, you talk about that you have a commitment to not increase the class size, which makes me wonder how we got to the point we're at now. And in addition to that, you say that you have a commitment that you're going to, let me just find the point. Okay, I was happy to see that because of anticipated opposition to the disruption of the traditional school year, you took it upon yourselves to decide that the community would be against it, and therefore you discarded it. Okay, well, I want you to know that you can anticipate opposition to using art rooms and music rooms as classrooms, putting our children in closets and halls and other places, and you can anticipate our opposition to busing kids all over Kingdom Come, and you can anticipate that the parents in this district, even though if the camera scans it now, we'll see a half-empty room, this room was filled with concerned parents at the beginning of the night, which I can't remember. I think I was 3 years younger. Good night.
Linda Abram, Upper Gwynedd. I don't know, I think I'm in a time warp here or something. I think we've talked about this many years ago. The reporter very eloquently asked the parents of this community to come out tonight to discuss their concerns about, and their questions, to ask their questions about the issue of the elementary overcrowding problem and what we're going to do about that. And I guess personally, I just have to tell you that I guess the way in which I would have conducted the meeting would have been a lot different, because this room was full 3 hours ago, and so many people who had ideas and thoughts and questions were forced to go home. I'm on a babysitter right now. I was supposed to be home at 10 o'clock. I really feel it's important that these are our kids you're talking about. We filled this room. These people had to go home. They're frustrated. They're very concerned about what's happening here. That's kind of like a tangent. Sorry about that. Just a couple comments. That's kind of how my thoughts are going tonight. Kids don't come in neat little packages. You know, we'd love for them to hit Gwyn Nor at a time where if we have space in second grade, they fit in second grade. But they come sometimes in fifth, sometimes they come in kindergarten. Sometimes we get 5 at one time. We just don't have the room. The modulars are a Band-Aid. It's been said before, we need another elementary school. Where's Charlie Keffer when he said that many years ago, and we put up the 2 we have that are already overcrowded. As I understand this, and I guess I'm just not really thinking clearly tonight, if we do these modulars that it seems to be in vogue tonight, discussing these 16 modulars, we still need to redistrict, do we not? Can somebody just answer me to that? Because Gwyn Nor is one of the buildings on the back of this sheet that is 5 classrooms short in the year 1998-99, straight line projection, no growth. We're getting people coming from Montgomery Township into Gwyn Nor like crazy every day. So I guess my concern is, since we are not able to have modulars at our building, as Art Wood pointed out earlier, we would have to redistrict in order for us at Gwyn Nor to feel any alleviation of the fact that right now we have 642 kids in our building, that we would have to have some kind of redistricting so that when these 16 modulars are put up, we would have an impact. I'm not saying that very eloquently, but redistricting would come from that, would it not? And it would affect quite a few schools, would it not? those 16
All
modulars?
those that did not receive modulars.
Right, those that did not receive modulars would be redistricted. Okay, so that I understand, thank you. I'm hearing aides in classrooms, I'm concerned about that. What I hear in that is increasing class size. That scares me, folks. Don't increase our class size. Thank you, good night.
My name is Joanne Orr. I reside in Lansdale. I had a question for Judith Clark. You said the two townships that had the most growth were Towmenson and Montgomeryville.
Yes.
Are they neck and neck
No,
for the next few years?
they're not neck and neck. Actually, Towmenson with their housing approvals will exceed Montgomery.
By how much? Twice as much?
When we went to Towmenson, what we learned is there is going to be 587 housing starts approved by the year 2000. Montgomery, because there's been some change, when we looked at it, it was roughly around 247. Again,
About
that was
2
a
to
year
1.
ago. It could change again.
To just put a new twist on that one with the modules, why don't you put 7 new modules at Bridle Path and 7 at Walton Farm where the growth is? They're two beautiful brand-new facilities that I toured when I was on the facilities long-range planning. I don't see why you don't split it that way. Put it where,
Excuse me, Mrs. Orr, we do not have permission to add one modular at either Bridle or Walton.
from the two townships.
That's correct.
How did you get yourself into that? They have 500
Because
building
we did a
starts
land-
and they
We did a
want.
land development plan that required X number of parking spaces. Look at the two buildings and think about where you would put modulars. Just think about the building.
Okay, didn't the Walton one have the church next to it, had a parcel of ground they were interested in selling?
No, they're not interested in selling.
Not now, but when we toured the building.
No, they never wanted to
mentioned-
sell that land to us.
What
And there's a floodplain between their building and our building. I mean, it would take a bridge to go over to get to the mine.
It just seems like a lot of open ground, that if they can allow
Look
500.
at it closely and look at the parking requirements that we have made playground, fortunately, that we take down a bollard or open a gate and allow people to park for overflow parking, but they're really set up now as playgrounds, and we can't put modulars on those lots because they are factored into our parking as part of our land development plan. I've been through, I've spent a lot of time on Walton and Bridle, and then the other thing is, where do you take your core facilities? You've got 30 classrooms, you're going to 37 classrooms in a building where you have a predetermined size for cafeteria.
But they were beautiful, they were far
They are
more,
beautiful.
far more than York and 2 or 3 other schools that
I
dearly, I
don't-
will agree,
I don't
need
doubt that.
renovations, they need money to be put
My
into
children's new house
renovations.
is much nicer than mine that was built in 42.
I just think those 2 facilities have the growth and they have the gorgeous brand-new buildings, and that's where 7 at each one.
Can't do it, unfortunately. We've been there.
Okay, we'll try to twist the township's arm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sheila Rudnick. I live in Montgomery Township. I guess I have some concerns because I can't keep track of what's going on in the township with their rezoning and what's going on in the school board, and nobody's talking to one another. They are talking about building more apartments. When you have apartments, you have school, you have children. They're talking about building more homes, and I just don't understand. My kids go to Gwen Nor. I have one in Gwen Nor and one not even in school yet. And to say this is a temporary problem, a 20 to 25-year problem to me is not temporary. And I don't know where everybody is coming from. And I don't know if anybody is following the Montgomery Township situation on the rezoning, not the anything else. Charisse, I mean, you're the...
I'm a little lost as far as what do you mean paying attention
to
the situation. You know,
the township
is this is not a 20 to 25 year problem. Our enrollment has been projected to table off at 1999.
But you're not considering any of the new growth and the rezoning that they're talking about in Montgomery Township.
Absolutely. You know, at one time, Lansdale was a place that was building, and the rest of the outlying areas were farmland. And
Well, I wasn't here then, so.
And neither was I, but hear me out. There was a time when there were issues concerning the school district at that time, whether to build more schools or how to accommodate the growth that Lansdale had at that time. They dealt with those situations at that time, and Lansdale got through that. 30 years ago, we became a bigger district. Now we're seeing the fruits of the development labors. And I think that this board has done more in 1 year to address a lot of the growth problems than a lot of the boards in the past. And we are paying attention to what's happening in Montgomery Township. But you are going to see a leveling out of development in even Montgomery Township.
Well, they're
After
running
a
out of
while,
land. You have no
runs
choice.
out.
But
You know, and to make my point even clearer, I was born and raised in California. And I grew up at a time when California was really developing. My graduating class had 1,400 children in it. I went back for my reunion, and the same school, the largest class in that school, same school, that I had to attend classes in modulars because of the large size of the school, the largest class in that school now is 750 kids. A marked difference. And that's because you develop out, not everybody comes, and when their kids graduate, move. A lot of people in this particular area stay here.
But
there are people in Lansdale that have lived here all their lives. There are people in North Wales that have lived here all their lives. And their children are being educated here now.
I thank you, I appreciate
Okay,
that.
so-
But I am talking about the things that are happening currently, not 30 years ago. I have children that are not even in the school system. It will be 2 years before she enters. Going through the school, it will be 13 years.
She'll be in the decline.
Right.
I don't believe she will be in the decline, not with the new growth that is happening, and I don't.
I'll try to address. Everybody mentions PEL, and this board even debates.
I don't even know what
okay.
PEL stands for, and I'm sorry.
The PEL is the Pennsylvania Economy League, okay? And for lack of better words, all the school districts in the area, well, I'll say the majority of the school districts, this is their Bible for projections, okay? And again, we debate it whether we believe it or not. I have a whole stack of PEL projections that go back, way back. This is the latest one that we're working off of, that Judy Clark and Judy Miller were talking about. I mean, Witchwood's right in here, Heckler Knapp Farm, they're all right in here, okay? They're just projections. And yes, you're right. Daily, you read it in the paper, you don't know if Witchwood's gonna go through, is it not gonna go through? That's why they have it right here in the category, unknown, okay? But it is a projection, it's their best guess as to where we're gonna be. So there is dialogue, no, there's not everyday dialogue going on between this board and the townships, but certainly through the use of PEL and dialogue at different times, we're trying to keep abreast. I think it's a pretty safe assumption that through the PEL, we're trying to keep abreast as to what's going on. But we even debated, are there other agencies out there that can help us other than the PEL? We've gone out and tried to find other agencies, but really, everybody keeps coming back to using PEL. So you'll hear that word, you'll see that the PEL mentioned in the paper. That's, when we say PEL, that's who we're talking about.
If I could have her last name, I'll be happy to send her.
Okay, yeah, but Ken said that if you could have your last name, he would be happy to send you a copy of the PEL report.
It's Rudnick.
Rudnick.
Right.
R-U-D-N-I-C-K?
N-I-K.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pauline Rose Martyr Shepherd. I have two sons at Gwindor Elementary School. In reviewing the options, the way I see it, if one more elementary school had been built when the last two were built, we wouldn't be here looking at this, but I realize that's a dead issue. But looking at the other options, I don't see any of them that I feel really comfortable with at this time. I really have a problem with redistricting again. That really bothers me. But what I really want to discredit is the idea of hiring more aides in the classroom. And I can give you an example. It's not just teacher-child ratio, but it's the amount of space per child that those children need to move in the classroom. I was at my child's Halloween party on Thursday at Gwindor, There are 27 children in the first grade class there, and so we decided to play a simple game. We had all the children come up in the front in the small carpeted area, and we played a game where they simply had to pass a pumpkin around to one to the other until the music stopped. That was it. They were sitting down. They were not up jumping around or anything. Because of the lack of space for those children, it ended up in one big wrestling match. And that was just because there wasn't enough space for the children. And then if we're talking about increasing our technology in elementary schools, if we're talking about changing the way the children are taught, more hands-on science, more labs, the children couldn't move in the classroom to do a group project. With the 27 desks in that classroom, there isn't that much space for those children to move around. And the temperature in this school is always so warm to begin with. I just can't see how you can justify putting that many children in that space. And it would be wonderful to have another two teachers in that classroom, but that wouldn't solve the problem. There still isn't space for those children. So I don't really feel comfortable with any of these options at this time, but I really hope that you do rule that one out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Eileen McMullen from Lansdale. The first thing I want to say is there will definitely be redistricting in this school district. There is no way to get around it with the numbers. Somebody is going to be redistricted either 97 and 98 or 98, 99. It's going to happen. And you know, you're going to have to face it, everybody, parents and you know, the board. I think that the presentation of the Knapp School Edition is probably one of the best we've had presented here in a real long time, and it's a shame that I'm seeing such a knee-jerk reaction that it's going to be expensive, and you know, I get the feeling that you're ready to toss it out. Looking at these numbers, I think the cost is relatively good. Comparing the numbers for 12 new classrooms and a new IMC and multi-purpose room in Knapp at a cost of only $1 million more than just the modulars, I find that very realistic.
No, it's over $3 million more. It's $4
No,
million.
you're talking more, you're talking also added cafeteria size and other renovations. Look, your numbers are not bad. Don't take the big number at the bottom. Break it down. See what you're getting for that money. You're really, for the classrooms, the IMC, and the renovations, you are getting a lot for that money. And, you know, there are hidden costs that aren't even being discussed on these modular classrooms. Art, are all the facilities in question able to handle the modulars, or are there going to be renovations?
The ones listed here can in fact.
The cafeterias are up to snuff, and there's plenty of room for...
We did a very thorough analysis, and that's why we're limited to the number of buildings that we show you there. But it does have many, many questions, and some of the questions listed allude adjacent toilet facility, distant to core facility, can core support additional students, can cafeteria kitchen accommodate additional students. We went through that with all 13 buildings.
I'm not sure that there's not some hidden costs yet there for, you know, parking, all that. Nothing came up.
I mean, it's a total package. Can fire alarm communication systems extend to the modulars? Available and adequate electric service, present bus loading not taxed by additional students. So it was pretty thorough.
As far as your size at Montgomery, how many, the classrooms there total 29, how many classrooms would you intend to add there?
Just two.
Just two. It almost doesn't seem worth it to add two classrooms here and two classrooms there.
We had them there before. It's a recommendation to the board that Montgomery can support two modular classrooms.
I just think to get a quality building, it's a good option. Nobody's asking anybody to pay for a new elementary school. What you're actually doing is saving your money by only buying 1/3 of an elementary school by choosing this option. And I think it's very economical to look at under $4 million to add 1/3 of an elementary school when that's actually what you need is 1/3 of an elementary school. You're not buying any more than you need. You've updated a building that needs to be updated because, frankly, Knapp School is going to need renovations anyway. So how much of this is going to need to be spent anyway on Knapp School? So I just think that I don't want to throw out an option that looks pretty darn good to me. although I did think that maybe we ought to add 4 modulars if possible to Nash, because we're going to have to wait a year to build this. But I thought it was a darn good option. Art, thank you.
Right.
Right.
That's
Right, to redistrict.
My name is George Riley. I live at 667 Crescent Avenue, just down the block here. I walked up there. I've lived here for 30 years. And I've been retired since 1991, so I guess you understand where one of my key concerns is, not having my taxes go up, of course. But I would also like to bring some historic perspective to this. I have 6 children. I have 10 grandchildren. 3 of my grandchildren, come to my house after school, and we do, they do homework there. If you want, I can help you with your current problems in the southeastern states and their capitals, that sort of stuff. But I wanted to bring a thought. My children went to school from where my home is right now. 4 of them went to 4 different elementary schools. Oak Park, Gwen-Nor walked from just down Crescent Avenue to Gwen-Nor. Another son was bused to West Point, and I believe one son went here. I mean, he got lucky. One of them got lucky. But 4 of them went to 4 different schools. I also have children living in other states. I have a granddaughter that went to kindergarten in Florida, went to 1st grade in Georgia, and she's about to move to Michigan. And she's doing great. Children are, I found they're really pretty adjustable. The things that I see, in summary, I thought the Dr. Bose's plan for the elementary school was great. I thought that was a good idea. I think the net addition, this one's not a bad idea either. I'm not against anything. I just kind of bring a perspective. But in listening to everything, it seems to me that I'm hearing this. A key factor is classroom size. Another key factor is safe conduct to and from school. Now, you can say all you want about busing and people trying to keep children in the neighborhood, but we saw just what happened tonight, with the area for junior high school children, which includes one of my grandchildren, by the way, is now going to be bused from the other side of town, to Penndale.
Sir, I'm going to need to ask you to start concluding your remarks in fairness to everyone else.
Keep what?
Conclude your remarks. Your 3 minutes is up.
All right.
I ask you to conclude.
Okay. Let me just say that I think that another key factor is that the children who go to school be kept together as a cohort group. If they go to kindergarten, when they go to 1st grade, and that there's some connection among the children. I don't think it matters where they're bused to, and I don't think it matters what school. That's all done. It's very well done. I admire the way they handle them back and forth. That's all.
Thank you.
Connie Spire, Upper Gwinnett Township. In discussing the elementary enrollment last year with Art Wood, I don't recall if you remember Art telling me that if modulars were to be used to handle the growth, the process needed to be started then in order for them to be in place by September of '97.
I always say that because somehow or other Labor Days have mean truly the word labor to me and my family. And I'm hoping one of these years that I'm not working through Labor Day putting classrooms together, and I'd like to start early. And we've been lucky. We've pulled some miracles off. We did Walton Farm in 12 months, Bridle Path in 14 months. It's kind of unheard of. And it's just because we've had good contractors and great people to work with. And you need some lead time to do some of this.
Well, I can see that, and I related it at a board meeting out of concern that we weren't discussing the elementary enrollment and facilities then. I know a number of board members requested that a K through 12 plan should be put into effect when the high school was being discussed. I just don't understand why these proposed options are being brought before the board now. And why weren't they brought before the board last year?
I think you're asking the wrong person. It's not my decision to bring it forward, quite frankly.
Well,
Yeah.
Yes, Donna's fault.
I'll take the
Oh,
blame.
my gosh, who was here? Who wants to
I
take
know
this?
that the last modulars, I believe, that were put on, I think that they were approved, it was approved in November, and it was the following November before they were ready. Okay.
That was Amy call.
All right. Well, one thing that's disappointed me is I've seen this board ask over and over again. They've stated they want information in a timely manner. And over again, I see them complaining that they receive information at the last minute. And once again, I heard that tonight. At times, they refuse to vote on issues because of this. Now, in the business world, if employees continually ignore employers' requests, they're put on notice and let go. I'm thinking maybe the board should consider some form of consequence such as this when their requests are ignored. The only consequence that I see now is felt by our children. And frankly, I'm tired of our children paying the price. In regarding the discussion tonight as to what different people feel needs to be done, I'm pleased that it doesn't appear that we're looking towards larger class sizes. I strongly feel that negatively impacts on the quality of education. I like the idea of working with full-time aides in each classroom, but only while we're working towards the modulars or the other addition that was discussed.
I meant by combination.
Right, not as the solution.
No.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rita Wolf from Hatfield Township. I would just like to urge you that whatever consideration you can give to the idea that while I appreciate that NAP certainly needs upgrading, if that option is chosen and that building goes up there, you will then have 4 schools that are in relatively good shape. You will then have 9 in which you have a great disparity of services that are available there and upgrades that are greatly needed in 9 other elementary schools that will really, some much more major than others, that could really utilize upgrades in facilities and in services that can't be provided now. We're all well aware of how beautiful the new schools are and how the technology there is at a much better level than it is in some of the older schools. So please keep in mind in whatever options that you choose that not only is it a matter of space, but all of our children would like to reap the benefits of whatever decision that you make, not just those at the newer schools or at some of the schools where the technology can be applied just by the mere fact that a new building is going up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Granenko from Telmenson Township. I wondered if anybody could tell me the job description of a teacher's aide. Specifically, maybe Judy Miller can tell me what the description is when you advertise or go out and hire.
The primary responsibility of a teacher's aide, one that helps out with in the classroom, is to be exactly that, to help the teacher in whatever areas the teacher needs. Oftentimes, responsibilities of aides will be to help in the correcting of papers. They are to help oftentimes in the running off of materials on a Xerox machine that the teacher might need, and to also help out in escorting students from place to place if that's where they need, and also to help in working with the children within the classroom itself.
Okay, so they really don't have to be certified teachers then to perform that job function?
That's correct.
Okay. Then this makes sense to me, and I'll just tell everybody what I was told. I wondered why my daughter's math class of 30, currently in 5th grade, couldn't be split to have the aide teach, since there's, in my daughter's math class, there's in her grade level, there's only 2 classes.
So you have your high and your high medium in one class, and your low and your medium low in the other class. So I wondered why the aide couldn't then teach either some of the children at the bottom of one of the classes that are struggling, or at the top that need the enrichment, actually teach on a separate, in the same room but in separate sections like they do in reading groups. And I found out that only the teacher could teach, which goes along with what you're telling me the job description is, that the aide was a helper. And I think the board needs to realize and know just that, the descriptions of teachers and of aides. We can't use aides as teachers, even if they are certified teachers. And as a parent, it doesn't make me feel any better that I have a certified teacher in a classroom when the job description doesn't allow them to be teachers. They can only do what the job description allows. Regarding class size, I have the September 19th long-range plan, which was sent off to the state, in front of me, and I also worked on that committee. And I just wanted to read what we developed and what went off to the state, just to refresh everybody's memory. It says in K through 3, a maximum of 23 will be maintained, and if a class exceeds that limit, and they're talking about a single class, that teacher should be assigned a full-time aide. In grades 4 through 6, a maximum of 25 students per class will be maintained. And again, if a single class exceeds that limit, that teacher should be assigned a full-time aide. Again, full-time, where I know this didn't happen this year, but my daughter's class is splitting that aide. She's there a few hours or one day not at all. And then it has an interesting line which went off to the state that says, do not allow for a 10% marginal increase, okay? And I think that's really important. Our committee worked hard for that. We reached consensus for that, and it's in what was sent off to the state. So I would like everybody to look at their copy, because I think that's important, and we felt it was an important consideration. It goes on to say, if an aide is employed, and I want to show you that I do have the September 19th meeting, and you can ask Sandy Mangano yourself for a copy. And it goes on to say, if an aide is employed, assign that aide full-time to the designated classroom. Do not assign that aide to several classrooms. If an entire grade level goes above the designated limit, another class will be added. Another important line that went off to the state. And that's what I wanted to note, that the line that reads, do not allow for a 10% marginal increase, which would make the maximum K through 3, 23, and the maximum 4 through 6, 25. With a full-time aide, if only one class is over, and if the entire grade level is over, another class will be added. Now, I know that didn't happen this year. And this year, they allowed the 10% leeway, which in my daughter's class made it 28, and lo and behold, by September, we started with 31 children in my daughter's class and in the other fifth grade class.
Could you conclude?
I'm almost done.
Yeah, thank you.
Otherwise, I'll get in line again.
Right.
I know I can do that. So we lost 2 children, and we have 30 and 30, which is well beyond the 10% leeway. And I just want everybody to know that on the class side guidelines that went off, we didn't even allow a 10% leeway. And I'm going to end with one more thing. I added up the number of classrooms from Judy Clark's page, enrollment 103096 from tonight. And I used the numbers of 23 and 25. So, Judy, you were nice enough to tell us that there's 43 classes currently over the class size guidelines with your 10%. I just want everybody to know that I sat and added up how many are over without the leeway. There's 111 classrooms, not 43. More than double, and I know the numbers you were working from, but I'm working from like the new long-range plan that's going into effect. 111 classrooms over without the 10% leeway. Judy Clark's 1,205 students are now more than double. So we're talking about 2,500 students approximately. I asked around for a calculator, nobody had one. But approximately 2,500 students right now that are sitting with over the long-range plan guidelines. Thanks.
No, that's not true. Sure.
Just a point of
No,
clarification.
I'd like Dr. Bose could do a point of clarification.
Because none of us has seen that final
That
document.
is,
No,
We have
that's
yet to
not-
receive the
that's not
final
the
document.
phraseology.
That's
No,
number
that's not
one.
The
And
final
that's-
document was sent to the board, I think, 2 weeks ago. Cindy's not here.
Right.
You do have it.
But I can tell you
But-
that,
But Cindy raised a good question, and
approved that night. Now, if it's different, this was what was given to us.
does it start at the very beginning, Cindy, that it will be reviewed and the following will be considered? The following will be considered.
Right.
It did not mandate or establish any change in the guidelines.
Is solid or.
No, but I mean, even presented to the state, there was nothing.
Some of Donna's problems were, you said you didn't want to be tied and whatever. So any of this wording and any of the terminology,
Right.
is always will be considered, will be assumed.
And Cindy, that's what I was going to
Thank you.
point out. If you remember
Right.
the chronology of this,
It's
the
always
board adopted a
has-
budget
yeah,
in
right.
June.
Correct.
It adopted the long-range plan in September. And so, and it also said, in all the talk prior to the adoption of the plan, that it considered its responsibility for implementing the plan as an annual exercise when it built the budget. So your reference, if you would reflect on that, your reference to the use of aids and what Ms. Mango said earlier, it really puts it in the right sequence. It's just, we've got to get a year now to catch up as we look forward to 97, 98, and whether or not the board will budget for aids and use aids, or adjust the guidelines remains to be decided.
Right.
But the plans that are now in effect, and the 11 aids that we did use, in fact, were from budget funds decided by the board in June. So, next
I
June.
just wanted to point out that, yes, most of this document is up to the board to consider.
Right.
There's nothing in here other than the Chapter 5 guidelines that have to be adhered to, the state guidelines, and the special ed needs that are mandated. And so therefore, this document really
It's a guideline.
doesn't have to exist, but it does because people worked hard to
Right.
put it
But there's
together,
no subject.
and it should hold some.
And the point is,
It
Cindy,
does.
I think you would agree, that when it comes to next June or May, whenever the board will adopt the budget, the responsibility then for considering the long-range plan will rest solely with the board,
Right.
and it'll either accept the elements of the plan and fund them, or it won't.
Right.
But it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
Okay.
But I just wanted to point
yes,
out that
we have a-
the
Cindy,
numbers
we have
are
some
so
more
high.
people, yes.
And they were high this year. Now we're gonna let them go high or higher next year with the development, while we manipulate, the kids have sat in classes too large for 3 years almost.
Thank you.
My name's Linda Barrett from Talminson Township. If there will be redistricting anyway, the 16 modulars seem more cost-effective and will make the boundary changes more district-wide. If you put a modular just on Nash, how does that help the deficit of classrooms in the other schools? I'm from Inglewood, so I'll use that as an example. Next year, we will be short one classroom. At a recent board meeting, it was stated and repeated that the class size would not be increased, yet it is increased this year, and it seems it would have to be again next year. You lead us to believe that increasing class size was a discarded option, but then why is the questions of aids coming up again and again? Please don't Band-Aid this situation. Whatever is decided should last more than 1 or 2 years. Please keep in mind that it's our children you are dealing with, and they deserve the best we can give them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, it's Ted.
Hi, I'm Nancy Burry. I'm from Hatfield Township, and this is my first school board meeting I've ever gone to, and my children have been in the Oak Park Elementary now for 4 years. And how I got involved in the Home and School Association at Oak Park was coming to a home and school meeting for the first time. And that's one of the reasons I came here was because my youngest child will be coming into kindergarten in 3 years. My main point is I've listened to everything. I think it's been very interesting listening to how you go. From an occupational standpoint, at our local company, we've gone through a lot of what we call skill building and how meetings are held. I just want to offer a suggestion in something that I've seen, witnessing today. One of the key objectives from having a management meeting is how you facilitate the meeting and learning from each meeting that you have. And I think from today's meeting, or tonight's meeting, I should say, that I don't really know if it's your particular protocol that you hold the meeting, that
You discuss all the agendas and you allow the school board members to first discuss before opening to the audience. I'm wondering if it's not a suggestion to just once in a while change the format and allow your audience, if you do have a wide attendance or large attendance, to limit the time. Maybe it's an hour, and you say, you allow those parents or concerned citizens to speak first and allow them the opportunity first instead of you, the elected school board members. You are our voice, but first you also need to hear our voice. So that's just my suggestion in allowing that, just to try your format. Change it, see how it works. If it doesn't work, you move and you try something else. But that's just a suggestion I'd like to offer to you.
Your point is well taken. It may be considered.
Hi, my name is Cindy Hensler and I live in Talmenson. I feel like this is always being discussed, the number of students in a classroom and what is going to be done about it, and I have no idea. I really have looked over all these. I don't know whether it's best to build an elementary school or build on the NAP or modulars or whatever. But I think we need to consider the child as a whole, and I don't think people are doing that. Putting an aide in a classroom is not considering the child. It's considering, well, we went over our limit, so we better do something about it so that we look good. I really don't think having an aide in the classroom solves the problem of having 30-plus children. The rooms are not designed to hold that many children and that many desks. I know last year there was a lot of discussion about the research that has been done about class size, and 15 is the best size, so anything above that, it really doesn't matter whether it's 25, 28, or 30. I'd like to know who's doing research on the effect that music on a cart is having on our children. Music and art and computers, I mean, I feel like when they're discussed as, well, if we can fit them in, we fit them in. If we can't, no big deal. I think they are as important as reading and writing and math. And we need to have a music room and an art room, and we need to have better technology in the schools. The children of the 90s are growing up in a completely different world than we grew up in the 60s and the 70s. It doesn't even come close to what we had to deal with in the 60s going through grade school. And I don't think we're considering what these children have to go through on a daily basis in the schools and what they're really missing. Yes, they're getting by, yes, they're getting great scores or whatever, and I think we're looking too much at the scores. Yes, they're learning everything they need to know to answer those questions on those tests and fill in those little dots, but are they growing up as a rounded person that's going to add to our community when they're out? And I think we need to start considering those aspects of child development rather than just the intellectual. Yes, we'll get another 8 in there and we'll make sure that they're learning, their times tables and the division and they'll pass those scores, but what are they like when they get out of school? I mean, I have to live in this community. I know my kids are going to get what they need because I'm there for them, but there are a lot of kids whose parents aren't there and they're not getting what they need, and we need to be there for them too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that everyone gone who wanted to go the first time? Okay, ma'am.
Vivian Heinrich again. This is a question I'd like answered, please. Elementary classroom utilization, straight line back page. Is this saying that if the projections are as you think they will be, that there will be no art or music classrooms available, even with the 16 modular, whatever, 16 modulars, or the NAP school edition? I'm not sure what this page is supposed to be, because there's nothing at the top that says this is based on such and such.
She wants to know, did you incorporate the recommendation plan
Right.
into this? No, this is what she's saying.
This is just straight line projection, and it shows a shortage of 14 rooms with only one art room in the whole system, which would be at Montgomery.
So if
That's
one
what
of
this
these,
chart is.
okay, so now the second question would be, if one of these policies or suggestions is implemented, does that ensure that these schools will then have art, music, and possibly a technology center in them? Or is it strictly going to bring us back down to classroom sizes, and we will still use our art and music rooms as classrooms instead of as the enrichment centers that we had designed them to be? I shouldn't say we, I was not here. But nonetheless, what is this, any of these policies going to get us?
I think that has to wait till a work session, Tom.
Pardon me?
I think that we really need to have that additional information at our work session to know that, because this is based on guidelines that don't exist. I mean, we do have guidelines that allow for a 10% leeway. That is what our established guidelines are, and these modulars, because I'm trying to work them out as we sit here. And I'm not even saying
I certainly can't
districting.
answer the question tonight.
Well, I gave you my opinion, and my bottom line answer to that is that we're looking for additional classroom space to meet the classroom needs. There will be no art rooms other than the one in Montgomery. There will be no music rooms, and none of these plans try to increase the number of classroom space to put those two types of classrooms back into production in our district.
Okay, and is that what this
If you take
gentleman
issue with it, explain how that we're going to replace art and music rooms in any of these plans.
David,
How are we going to do that?
we could debate this all night.
Well, I'm tired of hearing that it's not the case and there's no information. It's not here.
There needs to be more discussion. Excuse me, ma'am. There needs to be more discussion. I had a question for Bud, why we have 2 full classrooms for autistic when there are 9. We need to discuss it further Tuesday night. We'll get more information on it. It's not cast in stone that automatically we will lose every art and music room.
We've heard
They're
that
going
for
already.
years.
I said every, ma'am. You're right. We will receive more information and we'll discuss it further Tuesday night. You're right.
We have
You're right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to ask.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ellen?
Ellen Allen from Hatfield. Here I am again. I'll try to add a little levity to the program again. When I sit through these meetings, what comes to my mind is a game that we have at home. It's called Perfection. It's a little plastic thing, if you're not familiar. There's about 20 different plastic configurations that you try to put in all the slots, and the worst part is you're on a timer. And if the timer explodes, you lose. If you make it, you won. I feel like we're on that same timer here in this school district. What we're looking at, what are we saying, 1999, that's when our timer's going off? I feel like everybody's nerves are wrought with trying to meet this deadline, the timer, it's clicking away. The only thing that's different here is there are perfect slots that we can fit in. We don't have those perfect slots in the school district. It's causing a major problem, and I understand the complexity of the task at hand. I am, however, very concerned about some of the resolves that we've come up with. I appreciate the fact that someone has taken the time to set some criteria. However, out of the 3 criteria, they're numbered with a 1 point per criteria, and I think we need to weigh some of them with more value, and we all probably would disagree on which ones would get the more value. So there we would have another problem. But I am very concerned about what might be established at Knapp Elementary for a number of reasons. Again, all these pieces aren't going to fit, and I don't know who's going to be able to sit and decipher whose pieces are going to fit into those 12 classrooms at Knapp. I have another big concern about the fact that that's going to be a very big elementary school. I've been involved in an elementary school that size, and I need to tell you, I heard some comments tonight about, well, we'd save money because we wouldn't hire another principal, we wouldn't hire another guidance counselor, nursing staff, et cetera, all your core special people. You need it. When you have an elementary school, you cannot imagine the task of the nurse between the asthma medications and the Band-Aids from the playground and so forth, you can't manage it. And I think what we're talking about here is I'd like you to put some more value on what cost are we talking about. For instance, and I'm not saying this is my only ultimate answer, a new elementary school, discarded because of cost. What cost are we talking about? Are we talking about monetary cost, or are we talking about the cost of effective education? Which one do you want to weigh as a heavier piece? I'm concerned. I'm not sure about NAP. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah,
Sheree.
Mr. Clemens, I'll keep my closing comments brief. First of all, for a point of clarification for you, Dr. Bose, you may be under the impression that I received the final long-range plan document, but I in fact have not received it to date. Perhaps I just missed my mailbox in the compilation of my packet a couple weeks ago, but I did not receive that final document that went to Harrisburg, so I'd like to request it for delivery this week if that's possible. A couple comments that were made during the audience as citizen tonight that I really would like to address. First of all, there was a comment that was made about student teachers in our district. And I found the comment by the woman who's no longer here a little abrasive and really kind of offensive. And I'm sure she didn't mean to offend our student teachers, because I, for one, know that we have a tremendous pool of talent in this district working in our classrooms as student teachers and working hand in hand with our professional teachers. My daughter has, in my opinion, in her 5th grade class, probably one of the greatest student teachers I've ever seen in my life. And he is going to be a phenomenal teacher when he gets his credentials. The number 2 thing that I'd like to take issue with was the comment that the same woman made about somehow this board exploiting certified teachers and hiring them to be teachers' aides. I don't think any board member sitting up here had exploitation on their minds when we asked our personnel director to take a look at hiring certified teachers, and in my mind it was done for a very good reason. I would like to give the opportunity to well-qualified certified teachers a foot in the door to this district, to be observed by the professionals that teach the children, for recommending to the administrators which professional teachers' aides to be considered for full-time teaching positions when they do come available. And that, I believe, was the intention of this board in asking that. I'm not assuming that that was everybody's idea, but when I asked for that, that was my intention, because we have literally thousands of well-qualified teachers applying to our district every day that we can't hire. But this is one way that we can give them a foot in the door, and a way to be observed, and a way to be well acquainted with our district, our policies, our procedures, and our students. And I don't see it as exploitation at all. I see it as opportunity for them. So that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, 11:25.